Rotary Club of Georgetown. Yeah, Georgianne Hewlett from the Rotary Club of Georgetown is emceeing this morning. She's doing all the Zoom stuff, and I'm just so thankful for that. And I'm not trying to manage all that. Appreciate it. And got it, George. You got it. I'm so used to using a Mac. There we go. There we go. Georgianne's doing that. And so I'm going to introduce, if you want to go to the next slide, Foundation Training 27th. Okay, George. There we go. I've talked about this. If you mute yourself, that'll really help, and make sure your name is displaying there. And if you have questions, type them into the chat. Georgianne's going to keep track of those. The next slide. There's some contact here information. Seems to be. Oh, it's not advancing here is what's confusing.
It will.
Okay, it's just, there's a delay. I'm Jerry Chapman. I'm the District Rotary Foundation Chair for this year and for next year also. It's great to have you here. There's my contact information. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, either by phone or email. And you can always reach out to George before you reach out to me also. The next slide. George is from the Rotary Club of Georgetown. He's our annual fund chair for this year. He'll be back again next year. So if you have questions on the annual fund, George is a go-to person on that. And joining with us today, I don't have a card or anything for him. Where's Rich K? Did he slip out of here already? Well, he's mobile. Rich K's right here, our Regional Rotary Foundation coordinator, and he's going to provide color commentary. Hope it's not too colorful. So, but I will. The one thing about the foundation, our slides, we try to make them current. Rotary Foundation makes a lot of changes, and sometimes their communication to us to tell us they made a change is slow. And Rich serves as the Regional Rotary Foundation coordinator. I'll show you what that means in a moment.
There's Rick.
There's Rich. Yeah, I guess Rich, he's our color commentator today. Next slide, please, Georgianne. Every organization has a mission statement, and let's look at this one a little bit closely. The Rotary Foundation to help world understanding, goodwill, peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. The one thing about Rotary and the Rotary Foundation is we overcome hurdles that other organizations like governmental organizations or religious organizations sometimes encounter when they're trying to do humanitarian service. Our only goal is to reach out and do good in the world. We have no other objective. That helps us overcome some of the hurdles. Next. The Rotary Foundation, we'll talk a little bit about. There's Rotary Foundation and there's Rotary, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but past District Governor Ronnie Reynolds at the College of Governors meeting this year in Marble Falls pointed out the fact that a lot of us, a lot of Rotarians, either need a reminder of or they're new enough to understand the difference between Rotary and the Rotary Foundation. They're two separate organizations, but they're sister organizations. We are part of Rotary. We are the hands and feet of doing good in the world. The Rotary Foundation is the organization that if we contribute to that, it helps fund the projects that we do, both locally, whether they're here in Georgetown or Cedar Park or wherever they are, is help doing good in the world. There's a little delay in the slide of it. Let me just talk a little bit about the Rotary part of the world. This is the thing that Ronnie pointed out to us. We're a part of District 5870. Our jurisdiction, if you will, our area that we cover is the 23 county area that stretches from Hill County, which is Hillsborough and Itasca. Itasca is 47 miles south of Fort Worth. We simply come down the I-35 corridor, both east and west, to about the Austin area. We go over on the east side as far as Interstate 45 down to Fairfield, Texas. But then we jog around Hayes and Bexar County, and we pick up clubs in Bastrop, Shiner, Hallettsville, Flatonia, Yoakum, and LaGrange. We're part of a zone. Rotary is divided into zones. Each paired zone, 2 zones to combine together to elect one of the 17 Rotary International Directors. Last year, the International Director for our zone was Susie Howe from the Houston area, District 5890. Starting on July 1st this year, Pat Merriweather from Zone 29. Yeah.
District 6540 from Naperville.
See, there's the color, 6540 from Naperville. I wouldn't have known that. Is our district director. If you look, see Texas, the map of Texas there. We're Zone 25. Our zone starts north of South of, it starts in Central America and comes up through Mexico, crosses the border into Texas and picks up to put enough people to create a zone. But since there's a language barrier for training purposes, we divide that into 25A and 25B, but we're really one zone. The 2 zones, Zone 25 and Zone 29, which is that area north of Oklahoma. I don't think that we're being offensive to Oklahoma, our Boomer Sooner fans, but it's all about, it goes up and through Southern Canada. Rich Kay, as the Regional Rotary Foundation Coordinator, has responsibility for both of those zones. It's 23 districts, is that right, Rich? 23 districts.
50,000 Rotarians.
50,000 Rotarians. Prior to this year, there were 2 Regional Rotary Foundation coordinators. One would cover Zone 25, the other one would cover Zone 29. So that's Rich's responsibility. But the foundation is the funding organization for Rotary. Okay. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. I want you to ask questions as we go along. If there's something that's going to take a more in-depth commentary or something, I may ask you to put that off, and I'll stay around after the meeting and be glad to discuss that with you, or take it offline. But the real purpose today, we have some planned agenda items that George and I will talk about. But what I really want to accomplish today is answer those questions that you have. Okay, next slide. Yeah, just go ahead and click to next. We're going to go through the Rotary Foundation funds. When people talk about this district, we spend a lot of time, or have historically spent a lot of time talking about the annual fund. I think many of our members really understand the annual fund. The annual fund is when we make a contribution to the Rotary Foundation, that 3 years later, Rotary returns that money to our district, and the district governor allocates that money back out for the project that this district's doing. This year, we'll show you about what that funds. But Polio Plus, the Endowment Fund, we'll talk about each one of those in depth. Polio is really getting a lot of visibility. The situation, we'll talk about that in New York State, and what's happened in the United Kingdom are bringing a lot of attention. And the newest fund on here is the Disaster Fund. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Yes, go ahead. I got the monies we give. This is how the foundation spent the money. This is current through the end of 2021. Polio Plus is 40% of the money for the Rotary Foundation spends is for Polio Plus. Global Grants is second, and working down to the peace centers. Go ahead. We are Rotary Foundation are good shepherds of your money. We were 2016, we were selected by the Society of Professional Fundraisers in the United States as the most outstanding foundation in the world. We have been rated up for 14 straight consecutive years on Charity Navigator as a 4-star fund. And that next slide, you can just keep moving through these. We're one of 4 organizations that Charity Navigator rates, which is thousands of foundations, that has an overall score of 100.
3,200 is what charity now.
3,200.
3,200, sir.
So, I mean, that's a pretty impressive. And what's even more impressive, this isn't a one-off deal. 14 sustained years. Next slide. Because I mean, if you and I are giving money, whether it's to our church or whatever organization, or to Rotary, we want to make sure they're good stewards of it. And this is a breakdown of the Charity Navigator ranking. We also have one of the highest scores of the money that we give to it, the least amount of money that goes into administrative affairs, that the money comes back to us. Now we're going to move to the annual fund, and George is going to talk to us. George is our annual fund chair. He's from the Rotary Club of Georgetown, and I'll step aside.
Thank you, Jerry. See if I can adjust this correctly. From kid, so. Okay. Then we'll be eye to eye.
Grown up yet.
No, Jerry.
My wife would say that, it wouldn't be because of my height.
He and Jim Henry next door, and Jim and my. They're same height, they're good.
I know, guys. Let's go to the next slide then, please. So what in the world do we have this annual fund for? What's the purpose of it? Does anyone here know why we have an annual fund? What does it do for us? It's up here, right? What does it say? It's a funding for what we do today, what we do as a district primarily. Okay, now there are other things that we will do like polio and such things like that that come from other things, but this is the projects that we put together. Okay.
You do vocational scholarships. You do the backpack buddies, the challenge doing this year, trees in the libraries, Beverly did last year. Humanitarian global grant scholarship. All of that is funded by money that goes.
Projects that our clubs are doing, that money's coming from Rotary International, and all the projects our district is doing that we're a part of, all that goes in that there. Unrestricted giving. They don't, you know, there's a lot of very specific how you do it, but it's unrestricted giving, goes into a checking account that we get to spend those money there. They're the primary source of that funding of all that we do. Okay. Annual fund can be directed. So it's one of those things that we want to keep in mind when people are donating money. When they donate money, they can direct it to the share account, which is where you want to do, because that's the portion that comes back to us. Next slide. So if they go online, yes, sir.
Are all the donations from Rotarians, or do you also solicit from other benefactors, philanthropists?
And anyone. The annual fund, yes. Great. Okay. In fact,
There's not a lot worldwide. We do, I would say 96-7% of our fundraising inside the wire.
Oh,
now, Rotary International has started a new thing that we'll talk about a little bit later that is outside the wire, that is really out fundraising, bringing money in to Rotary International from outside of Rotary. But that's a really good question, and I just learned about that at the annual.
The split was 47.5, 47.5. It needs to be different.
We're going to have a detailed chart on that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but the answer is yes, it used to be different, 5% different.
Yeah.
And the answer, when you see it, is it used to be paid out of a different bucket of money from the trustees, and now they give us all the money, we pay it out of our bucket. So the money back to the district hadn't changed, it's just the accounting system for it to change.
George, just remember that when people are talking out the room, people on the
Yes.
line not hearing that as well.
Apologize. Can you get another mic out of there? This is on the left shelf. And one of the back. Okay. Next slide.
Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to borrow this mic, and then I'll bring it back.
That's work.
Yeah.
Okay. Areas of focus. So when we donate money, Rotary has divided where the funds go into major areas of focus to give us a very good idea and understanding of areas of need. And these are the major areas: peace, Has anyone done any projects in the area of peace? Georgianne, yes, we'll talk about that. A couple other folks in the room, yes. Equality in education. How many people think that has some value? Right? Everyone in the room. Okay, so these are real important things. These aren't just casual stuff. Yes, sir?
No, just a huge value. I just said it has huge value.
Has huge value. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Unbelievable. Fighting disease. Now, polio is part of that, right? But we're not just fighting polio. There's other diseases that we work to fight. Clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. How critical is that? How many places in the world have clean water?
A lot of places don't.
Well, it would be easy to name how many do. Does the United States have clean water?
Sometimes,
Most of the time, okay? Compared to the world, yes,
Yes.
way up there. But most of the other places in the world do not have clean
80% of the disease in the world comes from contaminated water.
saving mothers and children. Very, very important. They're the neglected in many societies. And growing economies. By growing economies, you make a big difference. Next slide. Now, there's one that Rotary added very recently. The environment, making sure that we don't destroy our environment. We're not trying to be political. We just don't want to destroy the environment. It's not a political issue. It is an environmental issue. Eradication of polio. Been working on that for just 1 or 2 years, right? So when did that start? Who remembers? 1985. Yes, Rich? Okay, but
Dr. Carlos Fonseca.
1980.
Actually, there was a pilot program in the Philippines in '79, and based on the success of that, Dr. Fonseca announced that in '85 as a global Rotary initiative.
Here's a fun fact, people don't know this. When Saban developed drops, his primary research position was Carlos Fonseca. So years later, when Carlos became Rotary International President, he came up with the idea of marrying 1.2 million Rotarians with those drops to see if we could eliminate polio. This is how that came about.
Excellent. And there's been a couple disasters recently that we've been actively involved in. So that's where that money is going. Next slide. Well, the money's, know what's coming back in. This is the areas that you can see, the 6 original areas of focus. And that's why it's dated back in 2020, because we didn't have the environment as an area of focus at that time. That's the monies that went into those areas from Rotary International.
Even if it was 21, we wouldn't have the environment because we wouldn't have had.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be
At the end of
2022.
This year, we'll have the first 7.
Yep. Disease prevention and treatment. The largest amount of
Because
grants.
This is 2020 numbers. This chart is skewed for what is traditional. Traditionally, education and literacy is #1. But this reflects all the work Rotarians did in 2020 for COVID.
Yes.
So this is a little skewed.
The one that looks kind of strange is the peace building.
Well, the problem with getting a grant approved in this area is being able to find a project that fits the definition of good.
That's my point. What example would you give for that?
I'll give you an example of one that is working in that direction. Okay. The Rotary Club of Georgetown is doing, and she's very actively involved in this.
Well, actually, George, I'm not sure the folks online are actually hearing the mic. You all can answer it. If you're not, John Pierce keeps telling me that they can't hear us on the mic in the room. But the Rotary Club of Georgetown has a DAP grant that we're working on for this year that includes peace bowls, which are wonderful poles. You may have seen them at Rotary International Convention that have the word peace in multiple languages. It has some statements from Rotary about peace. And we got this idea from Betty Laura. This has been done in other districts. And we will put the peace poles at elementary schools with a bench, a buddy bench, essentially for children. And we'll have some information there about how you conduct full conversations, how you report to peace. I'm excited about it.
And I'm going to bring to this district a project that I spent an hour learning about last weekend from Rotary Club of Fort Worth. They are doing a peace building program in the northern Texas area. That's unbelievably good. In fact, it was highlighted in Houston at Rotary's International Convention. They had an hour to talk about it. But we're going to see if we can bring it here. And I was thinking about Georgetown because I think your peace committee that Ron does, yeah, I think that committee would work perfectly as a genesis to start this project in Fort Worth. So I want, and by the way, this is not limited to your city too. I think Austin could use it, but we'll see. But that would fit squarely into the peace building and conflict prevention.
Is that something that Rotary?
I'm happy to share that afterwards. Yeah.
Great.
I think
Great,
they're building it.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Yes. So peace poles are something, if you want to talk about, Georgina, I'll give you a lot of information about that. We're working on a DAP grant that actually is going to be putting them at schools, elementary schools. There's 10 of them in Georgetown, and we're looking at putting a peace garden there, just very briefly. Next slide. Next slide. So one of the things that that Rich talked about, not Rich, Jerry.
The shorter one.
The short, well, I don't, okay, yes. So one of the things that this is the thing that actually got me the most intrigued about the Rotary Foundation. When I joined Rotary in 2005, it's actually in Temple South. Yes, great club, great club. At that time, that club did not do a lot in the Rotary Foundation. I didn't even understand anything about it at that time. When I joined the Rotary Club at Georgetown in 2006, one of the first training I went to was in Bastrop, and it was foundation training. The concept right here was something I had never seen before or heard of before. Okay. And what it is in real simple terms is the money that was donated in 2019 has come back to the district and to your clubs this year for you to use on projects. And the interest on that is what pays for the operation of the foundation. What an amazing way of doing business. I mean, everyone else takes your money, pays their staff, and then what's left over they use for their projects. Rotary International, the Rotary Foundation specifically, invests that and uses that to run the operation.
Did you say interest?
Yes.
But over the recent years, it's been zero interest.
No, that is not true at all.
We'll talk to that. That's a great question, but it's a convoluted answer that I want to walk into very, very carefully.
Yes. So, and a very interesting and amazing way of actually doing, handling the funds that are available. So the funds that are raised this year will be used 3 years from now. Okay. Next slide.
Just like that you had earlier.
The funds that come in are then divided and they go back to the district and the World Fund. Now, we're going to get into a lot more matching, but the funds that are in the world funds also come back to us as matching for different projects and/or total amounts for
So, okay,
specific
so
projects.
This is the convoluted part. This is the first convoluted topic number one. 50% of it comes back to the district, okay, in the form of two things. 25% of that, or half of the half, comes back as cash, goes into a bank account that Jerry manages, and that's what funds your DAP grants, that cash. And so when the district writes you the check, it's the 25, it's half of this that they're writing it out. The other half sits in Evanston as our bank account. So when you do a global grant, the district says, we'll give you $30,000 in DDF for that. That's the other half of this pile, okay? So that's the first part of your answer. And these numbers were effective before July 1st, 2021.
Yeah, it's cut off on the top of the slide.
Right.
I don't know.
So that money is still coming back. So you saw number 4 when he had it to 47.5%, this one says 50, so what the heck, right?
Go to the next slide, George.
I
Next
think,
slide will show it.
and I think you all are gonna have to go to that, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the next slide will show, yeah, if we go to that.
Yeah, we can do
No,
that.
There it is.
All right. So,
So, Rich,
Rich.
I need you to stand over here.
yeah, but I can't point at the chart and stand up here.
I'll point at the chart.
Okay, so
Get close.
money that, because of that 3-year differential, money contributed in 1 year and 3 years later comes back. Any money that was contributed prior to 1 July 2021 is under the 50 and 50 rule. So the money that comes back this year is split 50-50. The money that comes back next year is still split 50-50 because it was donated prior to 1 July 2021. Starting on 1 July 2024, the new split will go into effect. That was announced on 1 July 21, that 3-year offset.
And that district governor is in this room.
And that district governor is in this room.
That's it.
So to your point about
That's it.
interest, remember your earnings? Okay. This number here used to say 100%. All right, and that's how the 50-50 came about. Because earnings have been depressed, and this is not the first period. Earnings were depressed in 2008, 2007. Okay. Rotary didn't change that percentage in that first period. And in fact, they used their reserve fund. And they were in the process of repaying their reserve fund with excess. And COVID really helped them because they didn't do a lot of traveling and they were able to put some money back. But they didn't get it all back. And now we're going through, so the real, that 3-year invested earnings used to be able to pay 100% of the overhead. It's now actually paying about 95% of the overhead. So, and they hid that from you, the average Rotarian, for 2 years by taking it all out of the World Fund. So this is how they could do that, so you don't know. Remember that 50% that comes back in district money? That doesn't get matched. So you have 50% of the money over here, matching only 25% of the money over here. So they had 25% of that pie that never got back. So they were using that to kind of pay the bill. And unfortunately, you know, because of COVID and the money that went out for, like all the PPE that we gave out, and what's going on with the Ukraine right now and all the money that's being made available to Rotarians to help there, that 25% is right up. Yes, sir.
So my question is about the half of the half that's
Right.
designated to the district.
Right.
And you said that it's held for us.
Yes. And it doesn't, and so Shannon, all the money that Shannon allocated in that pile now. What's gonna happen is it's gonna roll over to Bob Crouch's year, it's gonna roll over to Doug Smith's year.
And we have a slide for that.
All right, now, it used to roll over in perpetuity, so we're gonna talk about that's no longer, we're gonna talk about some of those changes too, but you gotta remember, these are all timed changes, so if you look out on the landscape today, even though the split has officially changed last July, you won't see the effect of that to 24. You won't see the effect of the taking back the DDF, the rollover DDF until 2026. I mean, so a lot of these policies were announced, but they weren't retrogressive. They didn't go back and say, well, we lied to you 4 years ago when we told you we're going to give you. So they stayed, you know, true to what they told you. And so they have to wait till that time period runs out before you'll see the effect.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. That's a very good explanation. Next slide. I'm gonna let you explain.
I like doing this. Yeah. And this year, Rich mentioned, the giving 3 years ago, which was Jim Henry next door was district governor that year, was $662,000 and some change, what, $900, and it started advancing. Rich just the World Fund and DDF.
You need to stay there.
Yeah, out of the money that we get back to the district governor has huge discretion in terms of how that money is spent. So I will say we have a history of doing it roughly the same way every year. So of the total giving to the annual fund in 3 years ago, half of that money came back. And if you notice the numbers for the World Fund on one side and the number for the DDF on the other side, that doesn't look like a 50-50 split. There's an endowment fund, and we'll talk about that later. But the endowment fund of Rotary pays interest every year, and the trustees decide how much of that interest is going to get allocated back to the district on a pro rata basis based on the giving from that district. And we're getting between $5,000 and $8,000 a year, and it gets back to what the interest is going to be. So as we know, the interest rates the last several years on have been almost nothing. We take that money and we allocate it to a district grant. I received a check for $169,000 and put it in the bank. And out of that check, we're going to pay for the district DAP grants that you get. And we'll go through that process again later. What we do as a district, in addition to the polio money that you give, or Rotarians give annually, the district makes a contribution to Polio Plus. We'll talk about what Rotary wants. Rotary wants 20% of our DDF. So in that case, they would want about $60,000. In $20,000, we give more than the other districts in Texas give by just giving $20,000. Now, why do we do that? How do we do that? In the 2018-19 Rotary year, this shows the generosity of you and your Rotarians in your club. District 5870 was the #1 giving annual fund district in North America. Bigger than Dallas and Houston and Miami and Chicago and New York. We gave more money to the annual fund out of this district in 2018-19 than any other district in North America, from Mexico, United States, and Canada. Yeah. And then I will tell you, yeah, we was a little over 750,000 that year. I know it because I was district governor. The next year, Jim Henry's the district governor. Well, that year we were number 10 in the world. But usually that top 10 is the Japanese districts, the Taiwanese districts. They're very generous giving districts in Asia. We were number 10 in the world, and next year we were number 11 in the world. We give more in this district than most of the districts combined in Texas. That says a lot about you.
Yeah.
It says a lot about the influence that a lady named Patsy Durr from Clean Heights and Rich K have made to creating a behavior to give that. So, you know, we have a lot of DDF. We're gonna give about a little over $100,000 is coming back to your clubs. There's 45 clubs, I believe, this year out of the 60 that have applied for a DAP grant. And Doug is still our DAP coordinator this year. So be nice to him, because when he approves your grant, he's gonna send it to someone else, and then I get to write the check, or our foundation should write the check.
Jerry,
Yeah,
all, is 20,000 pretty much what we always get?
it's typically what we give. The year that I was district governor, we gave a little bit more, got to the end of the year, and I think we gave $33,000 that year from the district funds, roughly
We
33.
have given 20%. 20% they asked for one time, and that was 11 to 12 was for us, Paulo was governor. We've given less, though. We've given 10 in the first year.
Yeah.
So there were two governors over the last decade whose years were not totally settled. And so when that money came back, instead of going in with 20, we went in with 10.
This could happen next year, what Rich is talking about. We haven't done the numbers, but the giving, fund in 28 year after that, $525,000. $250,000 difference.
Was that due to COVID with the pandemic?
That's what we'll tell you, yes.
Well,
Yeah. The answer is yes.
I mean, the answer is that publicly, I told them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have if you're getting $750,000 versus $525,000, what's a whole to do that? We have seven vocational scholarships this year for $5,000 each. Next year, we'll probably be lucky to have 5. We have 3 global grants budgeted this year for $30,000 each. Next year, we'll have 1 or 2. Because what I want to do is maintain the amount of back to the clubs at a similar level in the past, and we'll get through it and we'll move on. And we had a good year last year to spend the money that his club member, Beverly Lucky, raised. So, but anyway, then the other thing I'll just point out on here, the World Fund over there, and this is really in the grant training, but the match on global grants now is 80 cents on the dollar. And again, it gets back to the World Fund problem that Rich has been talking about. So used to, we have 3 global grants budgeted this year, by the way. If your club would like to submit a global grant candidate, there's still time. You don't have to put money in on advertising. We need $15,000 in the World Fund. We'll put in 15,000. This year, we now put in 16,667, and the difference comes out of the World Fund. So it means the district is having to raise more money or contribute humanitarian grants in the past to get to the same level. Yes, sir.
You have a form for the global grant, well, that's online.
Yeah, it's online, and I can talk to you offline. We will, just quickly, global grants proposals have to be submitted by the 30th of September this year. That's pretty aggressive. We're going to review those in mid-October and look at all the grants, and we'll decide which ones we have enough money to fund, or whether we have to change that. Global grant scholar select is not until November and December, and that's for graduating seniors, recent college graduates that want to do an international studies, one of the 7 areas of Rotary focus, and we're going to give them a $30,000 scholarship. And let me tell you, I don't care what they say about young people. Some of these people are so darn impressive. I'm humbled to sit in the room with them, some of the candidates we have.
Did you include the challenge, the problem?
Oh, yeah, let's go to the next slide, Georgianne. Is that, I think the one I think this is one of the one. No. Okay, well, that's a leftover. Go on one more. No, this is the allocation.
You want to go back to.
Go back, Georgianne.
One more. Okay.
Yeah.
So half of all the annual fund money that comes in a year goes into this bucket.
Yeah.
Okay. Half of that bucket is used to match all the districts in the world, okay? This used to be a 1-for-1 match. It's now 80%.
Yeah.
Right? So that half used to all be sopped up by this money down here. If everybody in the world did global grants and spent their maximum, and half of this money would go.
And we have the slides in here talking
Yeah,
about
the-
the World
yeah.
Fund problem.
Yeah, okay. The other half of this went to districts, all right? They can hear you. Okay.
You gotta talk over here, they won't.
Well, yeah, I can do that. The problem has been in recent years, the number of things that Rotarians have wanted to do, particularly in response to COVID and the Ukraine. They took $14 million out of that World Fund bucket to make it available to Rotarians to do things like our district did. 50,000, I think, 52, 3,000, somewhere in that range. We bought PPE for St. David's, for emails from the district about the Ukraine children's camp over Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
That's being funded out of the World Fund. So, you know, the money's not getting wasted, but it's being used for other purposes. And when there's a chart in here that's,
Yeah,
okay, when we get to one chart, I want to spend a little time on it to explain to you the problem. And why our match went from 1 to 1 to 80% to 1, and why the polio match went from 1 to 1 to 1 to 0.5. There's a graphic explanation for that.
Are you going to talk about the decision-making process
on regard to what?
in this presentation?
Which level of decision?
Well, like when you go to the World Fund, who makes those decisions?
Okay, on the global grants, we asked clubs to submit them by the 30th of September into the, we will review those global grants. There's a committee reviews that. And what we're looking for, does it fit one of the 7 areas of focus? Is it a viable grant in the terms that it's well thought out? And
No,
the goal,
I mean, what body of people
Okay.
make decisions?
So the half of that World Fund, the half of that World Fund that covers global grants,
Yeah.
the decision on spending that is your district governor-elect, Jerry, our grant chair, our stewardship chair, meet once a year with clubs. The
Right.
clubs will present projects. You know, then we allocate that money, and that part's mechanical. The
So what
other 50% is controlled by the Rotary Foundation's Board of Trustees.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are 17 of those men and women from around the world who make those financial decisions to the other half of the half.
so I mean, on the global grants, if you're not pretty far along in your thinking, you won't make it for this year. But what we do is we're going to try to, we have so much money to spend. We're not the federal government. And sometimes the requests are greater than what we have. So we have to decide which ones are the most viable. Last year, for example, the Rotary Club of Georgetown was doing water filters in Guatemala. George is the guy on that. What we did is we didn't have enough to fund at the level that he hoped to fund it at. We scaled it back, and they'll come back further again in the future to do that. We do that mid-October because a global grant is submitted this year, but to the district, but it has to be approved by Rotary by the 30th of June of next year. You lose the money. So we want the grant to be mature enough, it's going to have a high probability of being successful. Because otherwise, we've allocated money to a project, we're going to get that money back and roll it over, and it's going to cause a problem. What I want to do is,
And you don't have the 5-year chart in here?
yeah, I got it in there.
Oh, okay, when we get to that, because my job with those 23 districts is to put together collaboration.
It's back there somewhere. We have the 5 years.
As that, you know, the money rolls and rolls, and at the end of 5 years, if you haven't used it, it goes away. So my job is to put together collaboration. So people like George, who comes in with a grant that we can't totally fund in our district, like Jerry was just explaining.
Yeah.
There are other districts' money that they can't use their money. My job is to put those people together, so we don't lose any of that money after 5 years.
Nobody wants to lose money. We're gonna figure out how to. Georgia, and just start advancing. One more. This is, I'll just say this quickly, is your club gets back your DAP grant, what they call a pre-authorized amount. That's based on what you gave 3 years ago and what your percent of the total bucket is. Then,
I mean, it's absolute straight math.
I mean,
This is as transparent. as
somebody-
you can make it.
we had a club president from pretty large substantial club in this district at one time said, I can't go back to my club and tell them this is all we're gonna get. Then you need to go back and tell them they need to give more, because you're getting it based on what you gave, and the year before you gave more, so you got more back. So if your giving's down and your amount of your fund down, you're giving less and the district's giving less. It's
Yeah, and it was a bad year to start with, because it was based on a base year that was low. And then that club was low inside the base year, so two low numbers multiplied together is a really low number.
And that club's about. Next slide, pre-authorized amount. There's some money left over. Some clubs don't ask for their money. Some smaller clubs, it's just, they just don't want, they don't ask for it. And what we do is take the money that's not allocated, we give that back to the other clubs that have it based on some criteria. Let's move on, because we're getting, here, Rich, don't worry. This chart, I think Rich created this chart, but across the top are the years that the money was raised. At the bottom is the World Fund. Rich has mentioned that the World Fund contribution comes out of that. And what you can see here is the demand for money, the giving from Rotarians around the world is growing about, what, 6% over the past 10 years. The demand for world funds is growing, what is it, around 20%?
It's 68%.
68%. So, this is not federal.
Which is totally not sustainable.
So,
So, hey,
yeah.
the
Okay.
yellow line is the half that goes to the world fund, all right? Top line up there is the amount of money worldwide that was raised in millions. The yellow line is half of that. That's what, okay. But the brown line is what people are asking for in terms of money
Yeah.
out of the World Fund to support their grants. And you notice that's simply not sustainable. And you see that in that drop. That 79, they had to turn down lots of grants because they simply didn't have the money. They had pre-funded some of them, so they had used more than they should have in one year to try to help Rotarians out. And then the next year they just, and I've been told that we looked at what's going on this year, that downward trend line is still there.
The other thing I would say on global grants, I just said you had to have them in by the 30th of June. If they give all the money out before then, allocation, you're not going to get your grant. So there were 2 clubs this year. One has representatives in this room that waited to June the 29th to submit their global grant. Fortunately, there was enough money to fund that. There's a chance that that money could run out before then, and the global grant wouldn't have funded just simply because it didn't get in the queue. It's
Yeah.
first come, first served.
And what they did was they used reserve money.
Yeah.
So they should have cut off in February, but they really don't want to cut off because when you break that connection between giving and getting, it begins to affect the giving. So they continued to match those grants.
Yeah.
But as he said earlier, not being a federal government, not owning a printing press, when those 2 lines converge, and they're about to, when they hit 0, they have to stop giving it out until the next year. And so, but sometime in February-ish, they're looking to run out of money this year. So if you waited to March or April or May or June to submit your grant, they'll hold it. I mean, they're not going to turn it down, but it will go into the.
Endowment fund is just that. It's an endowment fund where your principal stays in the fund. It earns interest over a period of time. And I mentioned earlier, part of that interest comes back to the district in terms of our annual fund. The idea, though, is as the endowment fund grows over a period of time, that it'll get large enough, it'll cover a lot of the cost of Rotary on its own without contributions from Rotarians. The trustees annually determine the percentage that's going to come back to share, both share and DDF. And John Durham, past Rotary International President, John Durham is president of the Rotary Trust this year. John was in Austin, not for our Rotary training this year, but the previous year. Besides his prognostication about what the Southeast Conference is going to do to Oklahoma and Texas, he did say some things. meaningful.
He is from that part of SEC.
I did have to remind John, he's from Tennessee, not Alabama. But anyway, John Jobs got three things. He says he raises money, he spends money, and he grows money, invests money. Okay, and the next slide. The contribution is the corpus of the money's ever spent. When you make an endowment fund gift, there's a general fund, but if you have a specific thing that's important to you, you want it to the annual fund, or you want it to go to a peace center or a polio or whatever. And we have Rotarians in this district that make substantial contributions, and they've designated some of it. One person is funded at perpetuity. It's a bequest, but when he dies, it's going to fund a global grant scholarship in perpetuity for this district. There have been others for other purposes, but the endowment fund is the permanent, it used to be called the permanent fund. And there's a real focus on increasing the endowment fund. You want to go, the idea is to move the Rotary world to a larger endowment fund that will support the projects we have over by 2025. $1 billion, with another $1 billion. $1 billion is the goal for that. That's an aggressive. You want to go to? I want to talk about plan giving and leaving a legacy. Our Rotary International person for this was here recently. Said, "Don't use the word legacy. They all think they got to die." She says, use the word remembrance. So, but there's a lot of different ways to give to the Rotary Foundation, either now or in a bequest form. That can be tax advantage for the giving Rotarian, charitable gift annuities. Rotary underwrites their own annuities, charitable gift annuity. The advantage of that creates a lifetime income stream, or for a certain period, what's called period certain in the insurance world. And the advantage of that is part of the residual part of that that's not spent is going to go back to the Rotary. So from a tax standpoint, part of it is ordinary income, part of it is capital gains, and part of it's tax-free. But it's a traditional annuity. Our Social Security's annuity from the federal government, we're not going to talk about that. Charitable remainder trust is a way to put money in there in a tax-favored way. If you have money that it's invested and you don't want to pay the capital gains, there's a way to create an ordinary income off that. In fact, this charitable remainder trust means that the remainder at your time of death, a certain percent of that, I believe it's still 15%, is going to go to the charity of choice. There's different kinds of trust, lead trust, and other kinds of trust that you can take advantage of.
There's one missing from that file too. It's named endowed fund. Chinese notes.
Yeah, I got a chart on that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. You're going, well, that's all right. We'll go there. The one I want to mention is that a number of people, I know a couple in this room use it. Donor advised fund, there's pooled income fund. They're kind of similar. Pooled income funds, a bunch of people get together and put money in and get an income off of it. And at the end, it goes to the foundation. Donor advised fund is something that a lot of Rotarians are starting to use in this district. Rotary has its own donor advised fund, but Schwab, Fidelity, all those have it. That's where you take something that has capital appreciation stocks, or whatever it is, you put it into the fund, and once you get a charitable deduction in the year that you put the money in there. So if you have a high income year, you get it there. Then you decide what charities you want to give to and the timing of that. In other words, once you've gotten the tax deduction, it's now designated there. It can never come out of there, but you can use it for giving to the Rotary Foundation. You can use it for giving to your church or whatever other charity organization. On the Rotary Donor Advised Fund, the one requirement is, or one of the one requirements is that $250 a year must come out of that goes to the fund of your choice in the foundation funds. But it's a great way for people that have a charitable inclination, philanthropic, they're going to give. It's a way to take that money that if you took it out and had to sell the stock and pay the capital gains, then gave it. It's a way to put it in there. You get a tax advantage in the year that it happens, and then you have control over it in terms of how it's distributed.
And the really neat thing about the Rotary one, yes, you have to give $250 a year to a Rotary fund.
Yeah.
But if you did this Fidelity or Pershing or Magellan, what they would do is they charge you a management fee every year
Yeah.
for doing it. And that management fee just kind of disappears out of your account. And this 250 is the management fee. And when it gets moved over to the Rotary Foundation, you get donor credit.
Right.
So, you know, literally 100% of your money. And so those of us who are Paul Harris Society, you know, we said we'll do 1,000 here. My 250 gets covered by that 1,000. There isn't a separate 250 on top of it. So that when you hit 250 into any Rotary fund, that satisfies your yearly requirement.
The other thing
Not
is
a big deal.
on the Rotary Donor Advised Fund, if let's say you put $50,000 worth of assets in there, you're going to get $25,000 credit towards being a bequest society member as well. Whatever half of the value is. So next
We
chart.
have a Rotary in our district, you know, these pies for polio you've heard about?
Yeah.
That all the money that our governor is raising, if she goes around the clubs, is being matched
Yeah.
by a Rotarian, and it's just,
Create a legacy. Legacy is generally, we're talking about bequests, about giving money and controlling it from the grave. And you can do that. You can give money, cash, securities, real estate, jewelry. You can give almost anything you want to Rotary. If you give something that's really off base, they have a committee that's going to review it and decide whether it's an asset that Rotary wants. But the idea is Rotary's going to take that asset, and as a nonprofit, they're going to sell that asset and turn it into cash. You can make a revision of will or trust. You can make, you've got a life insurance policy. If you want to give something to Rotary in perpetuity, you can give 5% or designate a percent or whatever, or a dollar amount that's going to go to Rotary. Real estate and other tangible life transfers, gifts, retirement plan. There's a lot of things you can do to contribute to the Rotary Foundation that are tax advantage things to do. There's things, the way you can do that without having, you can give gifts to Rotary without having to write a check now. We'll go to the next slide. Create a legacy. Rich mentioned a minute ago, $45,000 more. There's a Rotarian district whose grandchild has a rare disease. He's contributed a significant amount of money to the Rotary Foundation. And so I don't know how it all works, but part of that money is going toward research on the disease that his grandchild has. Yeah, you can Dow fund, you can fund scholarship. I said somebody's funded a global grant scholarship. Rotary causes, wherever you want to go, geographical area, you have control over that. My job, I'm the endowment major gifts officer for the district as well. My background is a certified financial planner. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your money. I'm here to listen to your story about what you want to accomplish and putting you in contact. We have planned giving officers at Rotary International that are well educated with your CPA and your attorney to make sure your goals and what you want to have is accomplished in the most tax efficient way that benefits you. So, I mean, there's a lot of resources. You don't have to do this on your own. All you have to do is just, give me a call, give me an email, we can have a discussion. And what I'm going to do is marry you with that resource to help you carry out what that does.
yeah. I've got two of those. One of them is going to create that endowed global grant scholar every year. And the other one is going to give District 5878 global grant, humanitarian grant every year in perpetuity. So is that money coming back every year does this based on the giving? At least two of those will be,
Right.
every year the district governor can plan.
I was going to
have
protect
it.
your privacy. I didn't. Yeah, I don't
okay.
volunteer. One of the things about my job is maintaining privacy. I understand that. My background. Benefactors, Rotary recognition.
Don't stop at the benefactor for a minute. I'm going to get.
I got a promise code slide in here. Sit down, boy.
No, because I want to throw out a challenge. on it.
No. There's a real, Rich, this is a real opportunity. We're going to talk about a promise club. There is not one in Rotary.
There is not one in the world.
In the world in Rotary. And this district, some of you, your club can be the first club in the world to be a Promise Club. Now you gotta wait and see what a Promise Club is. But make it benefactors when you do $1,000 pledge. It's thousands of, what, $9,999. Most people do $1.
So I have a
There's-
question. How many of you, and this is one that Randy asks our club on a regular basis,
Okay,
how many of you will miss $1,000 when you're dead?
past district
Nobody
governor,
raise their hand.
yeah,
That's what it takes.
But this is the case, this is truly, we always say, I need $100, right? This is not asking for cash. This is asking the members of your Rotary Club to put $1,000 in their will for when they pay.
they don't even have to put it in their will. They just got to sign a
Right.
card. That's the problem I have with it.
$1,000 when they pay.
Go to the next one, the bequest
So if
society.
you look at somebody who's 35 years old and say, we could do that, that's 40 years from now, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, Randy.
We have 6 people that died in our club that were benefactors. How do you collect that?
You don't. Good. Glad. Thank you. Okay, let's distinguish between a benefactor and a bequest society member. Benefactor is someone that's made that, said, I owe you, I'm going to give it to Rotary. They do not have to have any legal document to make that pledge. I mean, it doesn't have to be in their will, it doesn't have to be in their trust. And the problem with that is, if you're going to become a benefactor and you're married, or even with your other benefactor, please let them talk, have that discussion. I've had this happen. I am not going to a widow or widower, say, where's your $1,000 in pledge that Doug made? I'm not gonna go to Lisa and say, Doug made $1,000 pledge. Yeah, I'm here to collect it.
I just told her.
You just told her?
And truthfully, Rotary will not do that regardless of the amount.
That's right. Rotary's not gonna do that. Well, I'm not gonna do that. But, so, I mean, if it's something you really want to do and everything, is make sure you have a discussion. Now, a bequest society member is someone that is making a gift of $10,000 or greater. And if it's, Rotary's gonna want to see if you made put a Rotary on as a beneficiary for an insurance policy, they'd like to see a copy of that. They'd like to see the will or something. There needs to be some sort of legal structure in place to see that that's going to happen. You can always change the beneficiary on the insurance policy, Rotary doesn't cover. But they are asking for some sort of documentation on that. Randy, you have another question?
Seems like we ought to have a form where somebody reads that, signs off on it. We give it to them, they put it in their safe.
There is a form.
There is.
There is, not for benefactor, but for the
Bequest.
bequest level, there is in fact a form.
It works for benefactors well.
Yeah, benefactors though is just a promise. It's just you're making a promise. The documentation discussion on that has to be between you and your beneficiary. Beneficiary recognitions are come at different levels. The bequest society, bequest society recognitions. The Legacy Society is something that started in 2019. We have a couple members of that. That's where somebody makes a pledge of $1 million or more at their death. That can be cash if he stocks. There is a couple in Marble Falls that has a ranch that is, they have no children, they have no other relatives. There's no beneficiaries that they want their estate to go to. So they made a pledge, a legacy pledge that when the second spouse dies, the ranch will be sold and the benefits of that will go to Rotary. They're originally from Houston, so half of it's going to go to 5890, which is the Houston district, the other half to ours. But they want to make sure that their legacy is that the monies at their death don't go to the state of Texas or someone else, that they go to Rotary International. So there's a lot of things you can do. That's easy to do. Next. One last slide. Promise Club. You want to talk about this?
Yeah,
Promise
I do.
Club is where they all pledge they're going to give $1,000.
So, yeah,
Yeah, get over here.
so this is where you don't have to give any money. You know, the question George asked before, when you die, are you gonna miss $1,000? And what Rotary's asking clubs to do is to get every one of their members to commit at the $1,000 level. If you want to commit at the higher level, that's great. But get every member in the club to commit at the $1,000 level. And when that occurs, Rotary will designate that Rotary club a Promise Club, and there's certificates and other stuff. This has been in effect now since 1 July of 2021. So we're going on 14 months. And there still isn't one anywhere in the Rotary world.
Let me just
Now,
say-
we've had 2 in our district over time, but they're not now. The Rotary Club of Clean Evening was at one point, and the Rotary Club of Round Rock was at one point, but they're not today.
And that's to be every member of the.
Every
member. So-
dues paying member. So, you know, your club has several honorary members like Gene Davenport, they don't count. It's just every dues paying member.
Yeah, quite frankly, I mean, let's face it, a club that's got 100 people is going to have a more difficult time to do that than a club that has 10 or 15 people. Jeffrey. So I wouldn't point out that Georgetown Sunrise, but a small club will have a better opportunity to be the first to do this. I mean, if you have 10 or 15 members, it's easier to get 10 or 15 members to sign up than it is to get 100 or 125 or 150 members to sign
So
up.
if you can get 100% Paul Harris, you can get 100%.
But
Right?
the other thing I would ask you to consider is, you know, this is a culture issue, this issue of giving and doing this kind of thing. And so if you start this year, look at this as kind of that, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Mr. Bondi's club over here at one point was doing 6 or 7 a year. That was kind of their club goal. If every year they'd add 6 or 7 new benefactors. And we're on the road to get, and that's a big club, that's a 100-member club like you, that they were on the road to get 100%. They switched foundation chairs and the new foundation chair wasn't interested in following up on it and it sort of died out. But, you know, if you can't do it all, and you might not be able to, because you guys both, I mean, between you guys, you have like 250 members. It might be too hard for the Clean Heights and Georgetown to do that. But, you know, Clean, Georgetown Sunrise, Temple South,
Right.
you know, medium-sized clubs, smaller clubs have a shot at maybe doing this in a year. But if you can't, just keep adding to it. And then you'll get down to just those brand new members. And then you have the same conversation you do with, you know, that $100 sustaining member thing we talk about every year. Every time you get a new member, you got to talk to them about that. And you can add this to it, but you got to get to the point where that's even relevant.
So did we skip a chart?
Be the first.
Well, that's what, yes.
Are they also promise?
Yeah, that would be, a benefactor is a Promise Club eligible. Yeah,
Right.
so when you pledge $1,000, you become a benefactor. So it's just a matter of getting a club of benefactors.
So the real thing is you go to, okay, this is policy long time. You go to the club recognition summary, the last 2 columns on the right, the second to the last column is, are you a benefactor? So, you know, there's one column, are you a Paul Harris fellow? There's one that says, are you a
Yeah.
benefactor? Yes. Why? When all of those are yes, then you become a Promise Club.
Can we get a new Polio pin?
No, but your club, actually, yes, you do. So yes, you do. Not
Yeah, you
only
get
do you get, if you're a benefactor, not only do you get a pin, but you remember back, so Rotarians have been in Rotary for longer than an hour. Remember that neat padded folio used to come with a Paul Harris fellow, the little, okay? You get one of those. You actually still get a folio for being a benefactor. And you get a little chevron that you get to wear on your Rotary pin. Yes, you do, as a matter of fact.
I missed it.
Yeah,
I missed it,
that little one up there.
but there is some recognition. There's not a pin
Yeah.
per se. George, okay, any questions up to now?
Where, can you get these online, your slide presentation?
I sent them to everybody who was registered yesterday. If registered to get it, let me know, I'll send it to you. I went per page,
Okay.
but if not, I've got it,
You'll give it to, I got it.
and I can,
Jerry,
yes.
I have a comment. So I'm Jim Bondi, and recently I had the privilege. I had the
Jim, you're gonna have to come over here, because the people can't hear you at home.
Rebecca Tanaka, who was in town for about 8 to 10 days. And my wife and I had a session with her. We went out to lunch and we had a very serious discussion about the bequest. And long story short, collectively, we made a decision to become designated for the Bequest Society. And she sent me the paperwork. Paperwork took 5 minutes to fill out. It was very easy. Filled it out and sent it back to her. She's out of town right now. And
She's in Vail while we're here.
yes. And so one of the things that we're doing, coincidentally, as we're doing this, we're also updating our will. And so I have to tell you that the hardest decision for the Bondies was deciding where the money's going to go. So I'll tell you what we decided. We decided that it goes to Polio Plus, and if eradicated, it goes to disease prevention and treatment. Okay, so what I want you to know is Rebecca is absolutely great to work with. And what we're doing now is we're working our legal documents with her. And it's an easy thing. At the end of the day,
Rebecca is,
And if you do that, even though you're not a benefactor at the 1,000, that counts. So you get the Y. So I mean, anything $1,000 and up, the Y shows up.
so Rebecca's in Evanston. We have somebody in Fort Worth. It's our, are you gonna give now? Or are you gonna give after you die? Rebecca's the bequest person, the lady in Fort Worth. She'll drive down to Austin. She's one of the, she's on the Rotary staff. So we have a lot of resources. And what Jim said and what I tried to say earlier, these resources here are not to twist arms or break knuckles and get you to give. So they're help that we want to understand what you want, and then put all of our heads together with you and the professionals that support you of what's the best way to accomplish that, to do what you want that's most effective for you.
And I would just add that it's kind of like Burger King, and special orders don't upset us. We have one gentleman in our district who has a grandchild who's got what medically can class as an orphan disease.
Okay.
That's a disease that such a small number of people get, that the big pharmaceutical companies aren't working on a cure because they never recovered their money. All right. So Rotary worked with that donor to be able to fund research for that disease by making a contribution to the Rotary Foundation. So it's willing to do some things, as Jerry said, about assets and that other foundations don't want to touch.
So all the Rotary programs, I think the one thing, even the annual fund, everything, I give to other charities. They take my money, somebody makes a decision how they're going to spend it. As Rotarians, we get a say, whether it's directly us, if it's a personal contribution, or at the district level, our representative, of how we're going to spend our contributions to the foundation. We need to move on to polio. I'm going to get George back up here. Polio is probably caught the news recently. I mean, I will just tell you a story before we start this. About 10 years ago, there's a Rotarian that's very involved in the district level here in the district, that was 38 years old and came to my club meeting to help us with the fundraiser. And we said we want to give the money to polio. What's polio? It's kind of passe, isn't it? It's over with. No, it's not over with. This person now is an advocate for polio. First I got kind of really. Then I realized, that's good news. 38 years old, and he doesn't know what polio is. I knew what polio was when I was 12 years old or younger. So, there is a lot of the situation in New York State and what's been discovered in the United Kingdom and their sewage system in London has really brought the attention back to the first world countries. That really it is. It is just an airplane ride away from spreading. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. Next slide.
Our
Eliminate-
break is after, get up if you want to, go to the restroom, anything. We're gonna have a 15-minute break also, but don't.
So ending polio. We started this, we already said, right? 1985. Trying to end polio. There's just a minuscule number. You've seen this before, right? We're this close and we are this close, but we're not there yet. And just because we're this close doesn't mean that you need less money to stop the problem. In fact, you need more money to finish it off. It is Rotary's, still Rotary's #1 priority is eradication of polio. We are the founding partner of Global Polio. We work closely with WHO, US CDC, Gavi, UNICEF, Rotary International, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they contribute, they match what we do, and then some. Immunize more than 2.5 billion children in 122 countries around the world. Now, who remembers the number of polio cases? I don't think I have a slide for it. When we started this in 1985, I knew they would. Go ahead.
1,000 a day.
How many?
1,000 a day.
1,000 a day polio case, new polio cases when we started in 1985. Next slide. Oh, well, look where we are now. We're getting smaller. It shows you where now this was actually in 1988, excuse me,
It's still
Good.
Afghanistan, Pakistan.
2020. Okay, next slide.
There's been 15 cases year to date
I've got very
of
slide.
wild polio.
Now we have that slide. I'm trying to kind
As
of
of yesterday.
get there. So impact, polio-free Africa. So why are we trying to eradicate polio? What does it do for you? People respond faster and smarter. Health systems work better. All of everything that we have works better when we don't have one disease pulling us down. In fact, the systems that we put in place to get rid of polio, remember there was some kind of a virus going on in Africa not too long ago? A few years back, you all remember that? Ebola, yes. How fast was that contained? I mean, you heard it on the news for a month or two, and then it wasn't there anymore. Because all that we had learned eradicating polio, all those efforts focused and they contained it, stopped it. It really makes a difference. And we're very close. So continue, next slide. What does it cost? To protect the child, $3. So there's not just, there's a lot of parts of this, and we're not going to go into the level of detail because it's an hour presentation to go through understanding all about polio. But there's surveillance, and then there's also the vaccination. So all of that has to take place to make sure that everyone gets vaccinated in all the countries. Next slide. This is what we're asking. So the world, they asked us to put 20%. You already know we're doing $20,000 as a district. Each club. So what did our club give last year, Randy? Do you remember in polio? I think it was like
More than 50. Yeah, more than 50.
That's sort of, I mean, practically, there's, what I want to get to, the alternative was, it's $1,500 per club. The club, Georgetown Sunrise side versus Georgetown, that's a whole different ballgame.
So we actually approach it similar to the way district does. So we put a budget amount in our budget. When I was president, I think it was like $3,000. Okay, and then we raise money. Now, y'all have Happy Bucks. Does anyone's club have Happy Bucks? Okay, so all of our Happy Bucks go to polio. Yes.
Just a basic question about polio. The conventional wisdom was eradicated, is that right?
No, not
Never
completely.
was.
Never was completely eradicated.
There were 3 strains of polio, types 1, 2, and 3.
Rich.
Oh,
Okay. And types 2 and 3 have been eradicated. They have been certified and gone. So the polio that existed in 1985, you know, there was a trivalent vaccine that went after all 3 types.
Yeah.
Types 2 and 3 are gone, wiped off the earth. In fact, the last case of type 3 was a long time ago. It's like 2005 or 6. Type 2 was 5 years ago. Now we're just dealing with type 1. Okay. So part of the problem with polio today and what's going on in New York and London is it's not wild polio. So it isn't the same kind of polio that we worried about growing up. It is circulating vaccine-derived polio. When the original polio vaccine was created, it was from a dead virus and it was with an injection. That didn't lend itself to mass production and mass vaccination. So when Lou Sabin came out with his, Albert Sabin came out with his drops, that is a live attenuated virus. So for a period of time after people are vaccinated, they are contagious. And if the background vaccination drops below a certain level in the population, they can spread it. That's what went on in London, and it spread from London to New York. So the case, and there's so few cases of polio today that they do a DNA analysis on every single case, so they can track where it came from. They know in the Peshawar area of Pakistan, that's the case that went to London, and the one from London went to New York. But so, make a long story short, they're going away from that attenuated vaccine. It hasn't been used in North America in 10 years. It hasn't been used in Europe in 7 years. But until we can move all over the world away from that attenuated virus, we're still dealing with a second source. Good news is 15 cases of wild polio this year. Bad news, about 300 to 400 cases of vaccine-derived polio. The vaccine polio is now worse than the wild polio. That's why the World Health Organization and Gavi are moving away from the attenuated, but it's another slow process. But make a long story short, we are almost there.
Next slide. We'll continue. So all our Happy Bucks, and we're raising in Happy Bucks somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a year. We have a really amazing giving club. They give the numbers quarterly. I think that's like $2,500 a quarter or something that they were last year was. Anyway, so there are ways that you can do, you know, having fun and giving money to polio, and that's what our club has chosen to do. Polio Grants. There's where the money actually goes to. Raising awareness, detecting disease, getting the vaccines there, and the actual vaccine itself.
Yeah, I mean, some of that,
Simple break.
like in the vaccine, that money is actually paid to the US Centers for Disease Control because they're actually running the laboratories that create the vaccine. So Gavi, which kind of went by on the slide, but it's that worldwide partnership of UNICEF, CDC, World Health Organization, Gavi, Bill Gates, Rotary. The World Health Organization handles the detecting disease, so that money goes to them. And Bill Gates likes the fact that we have that getting the vaccine to children is almost all us, all Rotarians on the ground. That's why Bill Gates gives us his 2-to-1 match every year, because of that brown part of it.
Next slide. That's what it looks like. Anyone interested in doing that? There's actually a trip planned at the end of this year, this calendar year to India and Pakistan area to be giving out vaccines. I know in India. India?
They should need to sign up for that pretty soon.
Yes, the slots are filling up fast. If you want to do it, there's an opportunity. Next slide. Year to date.
Every week, the gentleman that provided that information sends out an email on Friday. His email is at the bottom of that. Gentleman's Terry Sigler out of the Houston area. And if you want to get this information or want somebody in your club to get the information, all you have to do is drop Terry an email and he'll add you to the list.
Remember, everyone gets copies of all these slides. So that's really important information to have. Next slide.
We really don't have it.
So, is anyone interested in this right here? We're making annual contribution to Polio Plus.
$700 a year.
Yep. What's the easiest way to do that? Online. Yep. And what's the easiest way that only takes one time online and it's done forever then? Rotary Direct. Who knows what that is? Oh, we don't have many people to know what that is. Okay, so that is the simplest way of giving reoccurring gifts to the Rotary Foundation. You go online and say, I want this reoccurring. I'm going to give $10 a month to Polio Plus. I did this like 4 or 5 years ago. So every month it comes out. I don't even notice it. Yes?
So my company matches my contribution, so how does that get?
Well, I want to talk about that later because that gets convoluted. There's,
Yes.
And you might not like the answer, but we'll tell you the truth.
Go to the rest of it.
Well, I want them to.
You get the it's how it gets credited to you. They'll take the money, that's not.
Yeah, they'll take the money. but
Yeah,
it's-
we'll talk about that.
So Rotary Direct, real simple way of being Polio Plus Society member and contributing to polio every single year, $10 a month, comes out of my checking account. I never even notice it. Now, there was a time in my life that I would really have noticed that, but I don't notice it right now. Okay, so I'm not saying it's true for everybody. That's just where I am at the moment. So that's a real simple and important way to make a difference. Next slide. World Polio Day coming up, October.
This is the fun part.
Yes.
That is your district governor.
Although you can't tell it.
Fun. Look at there.
Past District Governor Scott Rainey from Houston is passionate about polio. And he will sponsor a prize for polio at your club that get some of your leaders that volunteer to be the victims.
Another fun way to do this.
And it's a fun way to do it. And I told you earlier what the annual fund contributions to the district are. We have never been that robust on polio as compared to our colleagues in Houston. I think we're going to rival them this year. So, but that's a fun way. You want to be a speaker for your program. Need some volunteers to be the recipients of the recognition with Eyes for Polio.
Very good. Next slide. Provide
I
some,
think this is for
yes, this is disaster recovery.
disaster recovery. We've talked about this, the disaster fund. Is that what this one's supposed to be talking about?
Yep.
A big part of the disaster, this district has had 2 disaster grants. We had a disaster grant for PPE during 2021 year. That was when Jenny Henry, the money that Rich talked about, it came back and we distributed to the major medical centers in our district that support the biggest part of the population. Our center. We are now doing the Ukrainian grant. There's, I believe it's 50 children that are housed currently living in Williamson County and Northwest Travis County that are here for their safety from Ukraine. We're going to put on a camp for them in just a few weeks. We are looking for volunteers. Go online if you want to volunteer and do that. We have Ukrainian American parents who are going to be there to do the translation. A lot of,
Covered by Rotary Magazine.
and we'll have Rotary Magazine coverage, but this is just,
That's the district website.
District website. Yeah. And there'll be a sign up out there. There's for all kinds of volunteer jobs. That is going to be at Peaceful Kingdom where we had Rilo this year. I said Southern Bell County, so it's very convenient to this area. Let me just go to the next slide and see where you are. I want to
It should be great.
the peace centers, I'll just go to the peace center slide. Go to the next one. There's 6 peace centers in the Rotary world. And when I come to your club, I'll put a selfish plug in now. We'd love to come visit your club. I got 16 clubs scheduled. A lot of people say, what in the world does Peace Scholars do? I'm going to give you an example of that. How a Peace Scholar helped Rotary International President-elect Jennifer Jones at the time get a volunteer that was stranded in Afghanistan out of that. And it was because of a connection to a Rotary Peace Scholar. We'll talk about that. So if you want the story, invite me to your club. But you want to go on to the next slide. This is the break time. If you have some questions you didn't get answered in the first part, like the one, somebody had a question for Georgetown on the peace polls. By the way, the Interact Club in Maynard has done that, Georgetown. Betty Laura, her son is the principal of Maynard High School, so she has some influence there. But take 15-minute break. Tell those of you at home, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Let me look at my watch. Excuse me, my 10:34. Let's get back together at 10:50.
Has Rotary been a big part of fighting polio for a long time?
Yes.
A major player.
Yeah, I mean, Jose Canseco, the Rotary International President in 1985. He's the one that worked on the vaccine. He was from Mexico. Yeah, he was there. But they did an experiment in the Philippines in '79 to see if they could inoculate a large population. See if it was a pilot program to see if it was even feasible. And then in 1985 is when they announced it as an international effort. And so we were on from, he said 1,000 cases a day. It ended up, I did research, it's 270,000. So we're going down to where there are 15 cases for the year. That's right. I don't have to.
Oh, I know she is.
I know. Yeah, not even people like yeah.
Yes, that's what I love. It's messy. There's too many ways that money.
Well, and I have to. My former company, I still get. They were kind of friends.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah, I mean, you would be amazed. $8 million how much is it they already?
Yeah.
Once the material gets to the components, how does it make it to the front line with the soldiers? Like, where to go?
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, where to go? Yeah, you know.
It's just like an impossible corruption.
Yeah.
There are guerrilla groups in Africa that pay lots of money to get their hands on
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
And they are the districts in Poland. Ukraine. I think they're allowed to pull more than 25. Okay, because they're.
Yeah, they
on the
took-
ground.
Yeah. No, it's on.
They're right there.
There's just nobody in front of it. Can you see me now?
Good idea. We have more than one good idea.
which is good sign.
We have.
I mean, I see me on their part of this.
So anyways, I don't want to. Get you that kind of found out. What was that grant? And we can probably do that. And then we have another one right now behind that.
Oh, yeah.
So. I'll give you a shout out. The only thing we like is ideas. So I'll be honest, if I can get somebody to club, if I got that really great idea, something we can do. Don't be shy because.
Well, no, I don't actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all
Turn on our
great.
investment. I mean, we give lots and lots of money. Rotary, we-
Tech support.
I saw a signal on there, we internet.
Oh.
That is not good.
We're so good.
Georgetown hotspot.
We're having, we're straining to figure out how to use it.
Yeah. That's a nice problem.
So we've gone in with other districts to come up with really great products. It's exactly what we used to. That's what I'm good about.
Yeah.
A lot of the human trafficking.
Yeah.
There's one in Houston, in fact, for women who are covered out. They're actually doing really good stuff. So we went in for families.
It is cold in here. And I think it's cold. Right.
My son-in-law.
Not as many as are here. No matter which one I use. This is never. These are all
Now, when you think about that, they've got to come on.
What you doing, young lady? Oh.
And then they should be able to like.
No, that's all signed up.
Watch
Yeah, we'll cover that.
There's 30. And there's some I've seen that are not signed up. What we didn't know was
Okay, so.
Bluetooth.
Bluetooth, let's see if we can.
Okay, so if I can go Bluetooth and then go.
now, Friendship Foundation.
Two devices.
Regions
On.
Okay.
Says the C devices turn Bluetooth on.
Just let me
Excuse
use
me.
the government foundation you're working.
Let me turn my Bluetooth on right here.
One year wasn't real good.
Okay. Setting. Show Bluetooth devices. Okay. It's doing a search for Bluetooth devices. That's a keyboard, other devices.
And it worked.
There's some TV. Let's see.
And for this
Oh,
training
not too far.
today, you look at our district, you know, Zoom really works great.
So I've got
All
it.
right, Bluetooth is on.
2 and 4 hours.
So HR policy.
There we go. There's me.
No, I downloaded
Latitude.
Yep, on the south. So
Okay.
they come up here, they're spending their time. So Zoom is. All the people are signing up.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but let's.
That's an older.
Okay.
Whatever, that is, but there's no people. The problem is just, and they just feel less connected, even more.
So this is the
My
one
house.
that connects you.
Pairing. Okay. So what? Pair.
Yeah, if I go early in the morning, I go 6:20, 71.
All right.
I come back up. 14.
Add a Bluetooth device.
Yeah.
Okay. Now discoverable. So let's.
This is something that
I told Rex.
Rex told me that.
Should be talking to it.
Communicate with the remote.
But I'll take this.
But now it's discoverable.
In fact, let's see, this is. Yeah. See what happened?
Scroll down, are there any other devices?
This is. I didn't even know.
That's it. That's all the
I went
devices.
on the district website, said under construction, there's nothing in there, so I wouldn't look. I left it on my computer.
I'm gonna turn it off and on, then back on. Sometimes that wakes it up. You know what I mean?
We got good here. So that's this year. No, right.
She's on. Where do you add other devices? Up at the top there.
I tried that, but I didn't see.
Your club, I took a 25-minute speech.
There's nothing to give me.
13 minutes. I thought I was on fast forward.
Do you have an Ethernet connection on your?
I have a guy, actually I'm going through Wi-Fi out there, but I can go through here. I kind of want to add.
Bluetooth that one.
You're trying to cram a lot of stuff.
All kinds of unknown devices, by people's telephones.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
And I can switch this over and go through the, wireless, the wireless here.
I wonder if we.
Help her. Get the person out of it. No, I know what the guy did. Don't care. It worked.
Just trying to get better sound for
I
folks
just
on
want.
Zoom, because they're not.
Like
Here we go, here we go.
Allow.
With this minute device, allow.
Yeah.
Okay, they need, no.
Connect
Well,
them?
we're gonna. But.
Connected, all right.
Super.
So you connected, so
Connection succeeded. Close. So now we're going to go into Zoom. Not there. There we go.
they might have to call the.
So now I have to go into here and change this
20 minutes,
to use.
HR colleagues.
But.
Can you hear me okay?
Low.
Change the microphone. Can you all hear me?
You might have to dial. I wonder if they might have to dial into it.
Oh, they're connected on Zoom. So
Oh,
if
okay.
this is using that microphone, it can't go to them directly.
I don't know if they're.
Really?
What it is.
Let's go back to.
All they plug them to, you're the point of contact. And you're responsible for making sure that the.
I suspect that it's
dollar.
going, but
You have the volume up?
why it doesn't go on for the.
Oh, you didn't have the volume.
Young lady. The ones that were in the school this year.
They only own the property.
Queens College of Belfast.
I know.
Is there any way we can warm up this room?
Robert would know how.
I can,
It is so cold that
They have to study in one of the 7 areas of Rotary focus. It's usually, we had one civil engineer, clean water. He was a graduate of Virginia, had a master's at UT, did advanced study. The lady likes to went to Oxford. The lady, we
want to test this though.
Go ahead, one candidate. She's impressive. The lady's finished 2 years of master's.
Military.
Go do a public health degree at the University of Edinburgh. Go back and finish up. And do an internship for residents. So I'm just.
muted. Hello? Hello?
Testing.
But yeah, I know at the, Joe, he was at the concert last night too. Yeah.
And some of these ones.
Oh, you weren't there last night, did you see him?
I don't know.
There's a guy sitting behind us. I guess.
So, yeah, I mean,
And of course, we had the only.
the Rotary Club was way
This big.
had connections with
Like grade, so that.
Oh,
Testing. Is that on or off?
1, 2, 3. That should be. It's off.
Eventually looks like.
The other one, but now they're just being college for 1 areas.
Not interconnected, done.
What they do is
We'll take orders. and we'll-
Doug, can you hear me?
Still being built.
Once you interview them,
Doug, can you hear me?
documents come to the.
Give me a thumbs up if you can.
committee, which They gotta be the document.
No, there we go. That's not working. Oh, Adam, you gave me Adam, you can hear me okay?
Yes,
Right,
I can
okay,
hear you
good.
fine. Yes.
Is that better than before?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Got
Appreciate
it.
it.
All righty.
So it did? It did?
Works, yes, they
Okay.
can hear us. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it over here.
You go to London. Exactly. You almost had a receipt for all the funds. But now it's just like they have.
That's all right.
Next year, I won't have as many scholars. You're gonna have to-
Say yes, and we'll play nicely.
So we have this microphone here, which they can hear better.
Okay.
So that way you can walk around, they'll be able to hear it. So
Okay.
it's time to get started.
Hello, guys. We're about ready to get started.
Mr. Bondi, I'm gonna be watching the website for your application.
Yeah, it means I have to look it over and make sure. It's right. Then somebody else needs to go to make sure it's right.
Okay, let's get going again. Yeah, you guys are in the same city. You ought to at least know one another.
Yeah, I think they do.
We're going to resume now, and George is going to take us through some of the banners and the recognition and that, and I'll probably chime in with some of that. But George, you want to get going here?
All righty, can y'all hear me online right now? Thumbs up? I don't see any thumbs up. What happened?
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Adam can hear me. Okay, good. So we switched microphones to try and get a little better microphone for everybody to hear us. All right, first slide on the banners coming up. All righty. What's that? We just moved the bar.
Oh, did you?
Good question, Doug.
It's an observation.
Yes, no, absolutely. So I suggested to Georgianne that move the bar off the top so that you could actually see the top of the slide there, instead of seeing this, the big share bar up there. All right, so the first one is Irae. Who knows what Irae is and how do you get with it? Every Rotarian every year. Okay, what does it take to get there?
$25.
$25. That's not much at all, is it? 7 cents a day. All right, that's a minimum level with a recognition from Rotary International, Irae. Very simple. Get involved in a foundation project. All right. Sustaining member. What is the difference between Irae and sustaining?
$75.
$75. Exactly.
You can be district governor, son.
Anyone want this man for district governor? I think so. There we go. Okay. Donors should give between $100 and $249. Contributed over 25 million to the foundation last year. $25 a quarter, $8.33 a month, 27 cents a day. Not much at all. Now, different ways that your clubs accomplish this goal. Anybody have a way their club does it?
We take $100 up front every year and send it in
Okay.
the district.
So right up front every year, request $100 from each member. All right, that's one way. Excellent. Go ahead.
And we do a card draw and half of that goes to the foundation. So then we also put it on the bill, $25 quarterly on the bill.
Okay.
And they can opt out, obviously.
So they give them an optional bill of $25 a quarter. Excellent. Any other methods?
Yeah, we do, as part of our monthly bill, $10 per month.
$10 a month. So lots of different ways. $10 a month, which is, and again, it's optional. This is not a requirement, but it is a way to get people there. Real simple way. $10 a month, $25 a quarter, $100 a year. Excellent, excellent. Next slide.
Do that though, you need a system that guarantees it's gonna happen. What ours does at Georgetown, it's the same as what you're saying.
Oh, put the mic on.
It's $10 a month. And so no one ever thinks about it. It's just a done deal. We're on that.
Ours is in our. bill already. I thought it was $10.
So that $60 bill a month, 10 of that is correct.
Yes, that's the same thing he said for his club. Yes, $10 a month goes to the foundation. Rotary Club of Georgetown does the same thing. Sustaining contribution, what does that do? Okay. $100 a year, what is it going to amount to? Look at some of the things that specifically makes a difference in. If everyone is doing that type of stuff. 3 cataract surgeries in India, 100 trees planted, teaching materials, Costa Rica, feed a family in India or Pakistan for 6 months, clean water to 600 school-aged children in Africa, mosquito netting for women and children in Tanzania. Very amazing things that can be done just from contributing $100 a year. Next slide. Next recognition level. And these are all individual recognitions, okay? Next recognition level. Individuals become a Paul Harris Fellow. What does it take to become a Paul Harris Fellow? $1,000 or 1,000 recognition points. And $1 creates a point, okay? Okay, it can be done in multitude of ways. $1,000 to the fund, everyone just said. Reaching 1,000 points through a combination of outright giving and points. Or you can literally name someone and use 1,000 points and they become Paul Harris Fellow that way. Okay, simple. Next.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go back.
If we have new members, can we give them 1,000 points if the club has 1,000 points, or do we need to
Give them 1,000 points, but then do it.
You can give them 1,000 points. That is absolutely true. it is normally recommended that they contribute something, because otherwise they give them 1,000 points. There's no you can give become Paul Harris Fellow. That doesn't make any sense to say it's wrong, you know, but it is, you know, so what, if you look at over time, when people give and they get in the habit of giving, which Rich and Jerry have talked about several times, we've developed this habit of giving, they give more and more. The hardest thing to do is give
We're losing you on Zoom.
$1,000 initially. Once you've done, then you for the next slide, or I give $1,000 every year through Rotary.
George, they said your sound is going in and out.
Well, that's not good.
I saw a warning on this thing earlier. Sporadic internet connection, I don't know.
And that may be what.
Jerry Johnson Trust.
We'll have slides.
Well, we're gonna, yeah, we're gonna get it.
Yeah, we'll.
Good point, but we're gonna get to that one. But don't let me forget it either, okay? Because all of that, all of that is extremely important. So we talked about getting Paul Harris. Paul Harris Society is where you contribute $1,000 a year. Now, this, you know, the chart that Jerry talks about and different, you know, Rich talked about, where you have all this different information. There's a designation on there, Paul Harris Society, okay? There's a lot of people in our district who are eligible for the Paul Harris Society. That means they give $1,000 every year. However, they're not Paul Harris Society members because they never signed up to say, I'm going to give $1,000 a year.
Yeah, and I would say
How
that
do you
thing about
encourage
Paul
that?
Harris Society. Yeah, we want you to give $1,000 a year. We recognize that some people have problems. So, I mean, if you miss it, I think that's for a while, those people who are eligible sometimes don't join the Paul Harris Society. So it comes along with, so what your committee do is to strive to commit $1,000. Now, there are some people that make the commitment to strive. And we all have, life happens.
Jerry? Yes. So the number one reason in our club why we have several.
Monthly, it's the monthly test.
Monthly test.
We need to move on because we got an hour or so.
But the number one reason is they don't want the recognition. They just want to do it and just contribute.
But
It's fine.
Okay, can y'all still hear me online? So I switched over my internet source to see if it would work better.
They're saying that we're talking over one another and it's making it hard to hear.
Ah,
I bet you one of those mics.
Yes, we can hear you.
okay, good. Very good. Okay, and I apologize for us talking over the top of each other because that doesn't help you at all. So people had questions about the Paul Harris Society. So one individual, just the last person that shared, said that they could not, some of the members of our club are not signing up for the society because they don't want the recognition. Okay, and that's fine. And I totally understand that. One of the things that that I've learned over time is that by allowing yourself to be recognized, you challenge other people to step up and do the same thing. So it actually makes a big difference. I'm not telling them they should do that or not should do that, but I'm trying to explain what I have learned because I have always felt the same way. You know, it actually encourages other people to do the same thing. You know, if George can do that, I can do that also. Okay. You know, George isn't any better than anybody else. He's the same as the rest of us. You know, if he can do it, I can do it. So that philosophy tends to help encourage other people to do the same thing. What does that do? Wow. Look at all the things. that $1,000 per year makes in the communities around the world. Next slide. Recognition for clubs. Okay, now one of the things to keep in mind with this, so you'll see two different things on here. You'll see some slides that'll talk about based on membership as of June 30th or July 1st. You know, anyone who joined on July 1st doesn't count for, you know, against you on that. And you'll see other ones, all dues paying members. So dues paying members is as of today. These are based on the beginning of the Rotary year. What did you begin the year with? Okay, so it's the numbers at the end of the previous years. So an Irae club, 100% Irae club is someone who achieves a per capita of $100 and every member contributes at least $25. Then that's a club recognition, banner recognition for that. Next slide.
Well, speaking of that, that's what Georgetown does and nobody even knows it. It comes out of.
That's correct. Yes, and great, there we go.
That was the one you were on.
Right. This is the next one yet?
This is the next one.
Okay. They're the same slide.
Oh.
I don't know why. There we go. Sustaining members. So Rotary International used to have a sustaining member club slide. Okay. Rotary International doesn't have that, a banner for sustaining members anymore. Okay. But the district does. Right?
Yeah, we started in 2020, Jim Henry's 2019-20 year we started. Wish I'd thought of it, but he did. There's just a chart.
Yeah, there's a slide on that. But it's, again, it's based on membership on June 30th. And not only do you have, it means every member is paying at least $100. Okay. Next slide. There's the district banner that you get for that.
That's a state member too. That's to the annual fund.
Yes. Specifically to the annual fund. Next slide. Award to clubs in which every dues paying member, remember there's a differentiation there. So the 100% Paul Harris is not based on the members of your club at the beginning of the Rotary year. It's based on today, the exact day you reach that designation. Okay, very important to do that. Okay, and understand that. Now, 100% Paul Harris. So I want to recognize our foundation chair in my club, who has a really fantastic idea, I believe anyway, on how to achieve that goal. It's one of the simplest ones I've ever seen, and it really, really works well. So I'm gonna let Randy talk about that, but I'm gonna let you come on up here so you can actually.
Well, Randy's working his way up here. Let me just. We've had this happen. It's a point in time, as George pointed out. If you reach that point in time and we submit the paperwork to Rotary, don't add a new member until Rotary recognizes you, because you won't get it. I'm just telling you, it happens. So, you know, if you reach this point in time, we're going to process the paperwork and just hold those other new members in abeyance on the sideline until you've gotten the award.
I mean, they can become active in your club and do all kinds of stuff, just don't actually make them official members yet. So go ahead and share with you the idea he has and he's implemented, already started in our club, and we're well on our way to becoming 100%. And you know how many members we have? 130 members.
Okay. A year ago, George asked me to be chairman of the foundation. I've been in Rotary 25 years, so I thought this is gonna be easy. I can pull all this up. Never. It was a lot harder than I thought. But I had my goal of moving every Rotarian up one section, 1 point from year 3, year 4. Well, that was almost impossible. It turns out I had a group of people to help me, but most of them didn't know any more about it than I did. And so I said, I'm not gonna let that happen. We did get about 40 people to move up, and I won't tell you all the ways it had to happen. So this year,
the goal was the club is to be a 100% club. We've been encouraged by Rich K to do that. And so how can we do that? Well, I had a group of people there on the foundation, but they didn't have the experience. So what I did is I put together the 14 people in our club who are Paul Harris plus 8s, half of which are major donors actually. And I said, that's our committee. What we'll do is assign 2 people.
Now, he didn't ask anyone to be part of the committee. He just said, you're now a part of it.
Well,
That's a big point.
they're committed people. I
That's
mean, you're
right.
not a Paul Harris plus 8 unless you got a reason. I mean, unless you really feel for it, right? But so what happens is I put those 14 people with 2 people that are less than 1,000 points that are not Paul Harris's. And I said, mentor them. So I call it the PH plus 8 mentoring group. So their job, and they don't know a lot of these people, but 2 people, so what, you know? So I put it out there and said, how many of y'all will do this? Every one of them, only heard not from one of them, Billy Ray Somerville, but the rest of them all said, sure, no big deal. And they know how to do it. They knew all about all the paperwork. They knew about all the things it takes to do it. And so we have 38 members that are not Paul Harris out of our 130 something in our club. So I even gave him 3 and I took 3 and everybody else got 2. And so even now, this last week, some of our guys are already meeting, guys and gals are meeting with those people at Rotary, trying to find out who they are because they don't even know them because some of them just joined the club a month or 2 ago. And said, we need to help you get to be a Paul Harris for the end of the year. And we told each one of them the ways that can happen. One, we added another feature this year. For those people, we'll give 20 points for sweat equity. So we're asking them to attend our field of honor or work at a golf course, golf work, any activity that we have in Rotary. They keep track of the hours, and we'll give them up to $300 worth theoretically, 300 points, which is 15 hours for just those people, not the whole club. Everybody else I'd have already figured it out. But what we found out is the people that in the first year is the most important year. If you can't get them in the club and get them active in a Paul Harris, you're likely not going to, you might not keep them. Yep. And so that started 3 weeks ago. And we're already fulfilling all that. It's all happening. And I don't have to do all the work because last year it was really, ask Myra, she said, we'll never let this happen again. It's just too much work. But they said, well, what about the paperwork? I said, they can do the paperwork. They know how to do it. They know how to transfer points. They know how to get online, all that. And so we'll see. I'll report back.
I think that's real important. This isn't George and Jerry and Rich who know everything. Y'all have the answers, and we're just here to help share and connect those. All right, 100% Paul Harris patch. That's something that's specially designed for our district, for a club who does it again. Next slide. Foundation recognition points. So these are the things that, annual fund, polio plus, disaster relief, and specific approved global grants all go toward this, the Paul Harris status there. Points are accumulated, dollar basis, $1 is 1 point. Points expire on the death of the donor. Unless it's a major donor, then it'll be the death of the surviving spouse. Next slide. You can transfer the points, $100 increments. Some of the mechanics, okay? You can't transfer, and they don't transfer cents. So one of the folks that I got said he needed $303.45. Okay, 305. Come on, let's make this simple. Don't use nickels and dimes, okay? You transfer it one time. You can't transfer it to the district or your club or yourself. Would ask me that, hey, you know, I give $100, I give the 100 points back to myself and it goes for 200 right now. We can't do that. Okay. Clubs generate recognition points. So undesignated funds to the annual fund are recognition points that the club then has to give. Annual fund, Polio Plus, disaster relief. Next slide. Ways to give. I think this is yours.
Yeah, next slide, Georgetown, please. Yeah, there we go. Just quickly, see, Rotary Direct, George has talked about, you can go to the Rotary website and donate on there online. It's on another chart. Make sure you're signed on to My Rotary before you donate money. Rotary will take your money, but you won't get recognition credit because they don't know who in that 1.4 million members you are. And it takes 2 months to 3 months sometimes to unravel those things. Raise for Rotary, we'll talk about that, and check to the foundation chair. Mail it, you mail a gift to the foundation, grow. Corporate matches are available. Someone asked about corporate matches earlier. What's your first name?
Joe.
Joe. Joe wants to give $500 to the Rotary Foundation, and his employer tells Joe, I will give $500. So now Rotary has collected $1,000. I mean, what does Joe get recognition-wise? He gets $500 because he's made a cash contribution to the Rotary Foundation. In terms of credit, he's going to get 500 points based on what his employer does. And that's controlled by the Internal Revenue Service. And it's because he can't take a tax deduction. But so you get your company match, but the company match is going to be considered recognition points.
And the only time that becomes a factor is at major donor level.
Yeah.
Because major donor level is always cash from you or me,
Okay.
the individual.
Okay. Pledge contracts. I think I got a slide on that, but now the pledge contract is, we see this is somebody wants to be a major donor. Take, for example, major donor is $10,000 cash contribution to the Rotary Foundation. They're at $8,000. They don't want to give $2,000 this year. They can afford to give $2,000 a year. But what you can do is sign a contract with Rotary that will make you a major donor too, in this case, in the example, but you have 3 years to give the money. Now, used to, they're providing more, used to you had to commit at how much money was going to go every year. Now, as long as you give money every year in 3 years, you've given this example, given the extra $2,000, you're a major donor too. What happens if for some reason you don't fulfill the contract, they'll just pull the major donor to recognition. I see this a lot with people become district governors and things. They want, whatever they want. People want to be the next level. They want to be recognized for whatever reason. There's a way to do it. It's a contract. It's a pledge to Rotary. The other is qualified charitable contribution. Oh, Myra?
Oh, I have a question. So we might have done something illegal. I don't know, like with Joe and them. We got a check from them, but it came to our club. And our club writes a check to the foundation. So they got the whole thing. Is that illegal?
Probably might be.
How do we find out?
No, but the foundation should have given you recognition points for that's what would happen if it went to the founder directly to the founder. Most employers are not going to send a check to your club. Why not? Your club is not a tax deductible charitable organization under the Internal Revenue Code. You're a 501c4, which means you're a nonprofit. You don't pay income taxes, but you cannot receive and give charitable contribution credit to somebody. That's the reason the foundation, or some clubs have foundations. They're 501c3. That's a charitable. You can give money to that. You can take it on a personal tax deduction, but money you give directly to your Rotary Club is not tax deductible ever.
So they give it to our foundation.
They give you the foundation, 501c3, tax deductible. A lot of clubs, Northwest Austin just started a 501c3, and the reason is they have some groups that want to give money to the club, but they want to get credit for it, so you have a 501c3. Next
I
slide,
have a
please.
quick question.
Yes, sir.
So on the corporate matching gift, the person giving it, the member of the club giving it will get credit, cash credit, but the corporation that matches, they'll only get points for that, right?
They'll get points. They'll still get recognition credit, but it won't be cash. What's the difference? If you go to the club resource summary, I'm not sure we'll get through all the charges. Club resource summary report all your foundation chairs had, shows you what the recognition level is for your individual Rotarian. What the club recognition summary does not show is how much of that is cash and how much of that is points. There's no way for you to have access to that information. So what will happen is, in fact, your question, Rob, is the reason it makes a difference is major donor recognitions are all cash donations. So, and the only way, if you have that question, you think you're close to being a major donor, and you're Paul Harris plus 8, you want to know how much of it's cash, you send me an email and I can get that information. I have access to it, but it's because of the personal nature of it, it's not global access.
Do we not have access to my road? I can't go look at my.
You go look at your club resource summary. You can look at your individual
I can look
giving.
at mine. Yeah.
You can look at your individual giving.
Okay.
Under the, what Doug is asking is, how do you know? You, as an individual Rotarian, can log on to My Rotary, go to Foundation Reports. It'll bring up your individuals right at the top. Click on the second tab that says Details. Not the stuff, the one that shows it. There's another tab on the Excel on the form. It shows details, and you can find out how much your cash is. Most people don't know that or don't want to take the time to do it. I get emails. Next slide. Rotary Direct, George has talked very eloquently about this. I just mentioned this. Be logged on.
Don't log on as Rich K. Just log
Yeah,
on.
don't log. You can log on as me, give me credit. No, make sure your name shows up on My Rotary, that you're logged on, so that they can directly credit you. It happens to say that. Next slide. This is a keeper. This is a slide you want to keep. People are going to ask you as foundation chairs, do I get Paul Harris credit for this or what? This shows the credit and what counts toward all the different awards across there. Paul Harris Fellow. You noticed for the Endowment Fund, the major donor, everything counts. Any money you give the Rotary Foundation counts toward major donor. What's the Endowment Fund? But, you know, I still refer to this chart because sometimes I just can't remember. DDF, annual fund only contributions come back to the district. The next chart, please. Facebook. We all receive Facebook. It's my birthday and Jerry wants to raise $200 for the Rotary Foundation. And you give me 20 and Doug gives me 20 and I get my $200. Facebook will send that money to the Rotary Foundation. But each of you will not get credit for that. They send one check to the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary has come up with a solution for that. It's on the next slide, called Raise for Rotary.
This is how you get other than Rotarians to help contribute to the Rotary Foundation.
Go to the next slide. I'll talk about it more in detail, but it's a way to give money. So my club with the Northwest Austin Club joined together on a polio day project last year. We had Rotarians at that event that wanted to give money, and we did. But nobody walks around. I have no idea what my Rotary membership number is. I promise you, I don't know. I do know what my email is. So if you want to have a fundraising event, you want people to contribute now, and they're Rotarians, and they want to get recognition credit, use this. And all you have to have is email. Make sure, though, if you're using your email and you're making a contribution and you want to get credit, you use the email, not your business email. Use the one that's on your Rotary membership number, not Club Runner or anything else. What Rotary recognizes as your email. So if I have several emails for different purposes, so I want to use the email. So when you have an event, you can fundraise, and for the Rotarians, all you have to do is collect their email, and they're going to get recognition credit for it. Corporate matching gifts, we talked about those. Yeah. Pledge contracts, we talked about those. Those are the 3-year contracts that can be made. Next slide, we're trying to get through some of this. Foundation reports. You want to do this? You want me to just go through it, Jerry? Okay. Sign on to My Rotary as foundation chairs, club foundation chairs, club presidents. You have access to sign on and hover over the blue banner. Rotary moves the banner for Rotary Foundation around. It seems to be indiscriminate time period. But go to the Rotary Foundation. Underneath that, there's going to be a foundations report tab, and when you open that up, you're going to have access to all your club information as well as your own personal information. That next slide. Club recognition summary. That's going to show every Rotarian in your club, the recognition amount, the Paul Harris level, foundation recognition points for the club, date of life's contribution. When it says annual fund beside it, or Polio Plus, or whatever it is, it's what they gave, the lifetime they gave to the foundation. So you might give something to the annual fund this month, you might give something to Polio Plus next month, and when that would show that. And whether a Rotary director benefactor status. We got some slides. Club banner fund. You want to know, you want to put the club recognition summary back up? Right here. Recognition points. Points and cash, recognition levels.
So here's the amount that you have.
Right.
Here's the amount that you have available to give. One-time transfer, not to the club, not to the district, not to yourself, but to any other individual.
We also know what date you became a Paul Harris Fellow. We also know when your life's contributed. You'll have that information to your
You
club.
also notice that this person here is both Rotary Direct and a benefactor, and there's no other, well, there's one other benefactor here.
Okay, next
Oh,
slide.
a couple of those in
Hey,
there.
Jerry.
Yes.
Jerry, go back to that previous slide.
Previous slide, please, Georgia.
So I use that information to troubleshoot problems with our members, i.e. if I see that an individual who's made a donation that's getting recognition at the next Paul Harris level that hasn't taken place, my first source is the club recognition summary.
Yeah, what Jim Bondi from Colleen Heights is saying, he uses this to, if a Rotarian comes to him and wants to know whether their recognition's been posted, whether they've been recognized or something, he can go to this report. I will tell you another thing you can do with this report. It's too late for this year. On July 15th of next year, print this report out for your keeping. Then as you go through the year, you can see how much money each one of them, but you compare it against the subsequent club resource summary.
Now, what I recommend is in the first of every month, you print the report.
Yeah.
So you know what's going on all year long.
Yeah, what George,
You'll find that valuable.
I think you need to talk over here, George.
No, all I have to do is talk.
Oh, talk to the mic.
That's the mic now.
Okay, let's go on to the next one because we're running a little bit by. Banner report's real easy. If there's a date plugged into the column, the person has contributed at that level. So if you look over there where it says club member, TRF giving, Irae, sustaining member, in this example here, though, you notice somebody's new. July 1st. If somebody joins July 1st or afterwards, they don't count towards your recognition for that year. When I joined Rotary, clubs would start holding their membership applications up at the end of the year so they could get the banners and they would process them. So, you know, it's a matter of measurements.
It doesn't apply toward these items. What does it apply toward? What is members now? Dues paying members now?
100% Paul Harris.
100% Paul Harris. That's not listed on here. So this does not apply for any of those, but it does apply for 100% Paul Harris.
Yeah, that's true. And you know, it's right, there's some eligible members we talked about earlier, and there's some Paul Harris Society members. If you're wanting to, all you have to do to, but one that has to do to become a Paul Harris Society member is fill out a form and say you want to make that commitment. And if people are eligible and they're not yet a Paul Harris Society member, they're the low hanging fruit to approach and ask about that. Next slide.
Can I congratulate District 5870 on something?
Rich Case wants to congratulate District 5870 on something. Yeah, Jerry, let him come up now.
Jerry's about to find us out. We're headed to Minneapolis to the Zone Institute here in 2 weeks. But 5870 is has won the award for percentage of contributing Paul Harris Society members. So, you know, there are no Rotary points. So if somebody in your club says, I'll join, you know, and they sign the paperwork and they get the little chevron and they start wearing it, then they never give the $1,000. There's no Rotary point. So that nobody comes out there and says, give me the chevron back. So District 5870 in all of Region 36, from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, all the way down to the Mexican border, has the highest percentage of their Paul Harris Society members who actually completed their pledge. So that's an Hispanic.
There is a district in Texas that has multiple members more than we do, but they don't participate.
Right.
We won't tell. This is a report. If you want to know, this is going to show you, George, if you'll point over there, Bivana. On the far left, on the upper left is the goal that your president set for this year. So in this case, in the example up here, it's $35,000. But the next column is what the actuals are. So in this case, up there in 21-22, the president pledged $35,000 and the actual was $84,000.
Yeah, they had the governor there.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the story. But what'll happen though, I'll look at these and I'll see some clubs that there are presidents that's going to say, I want to make my goal, so I'm going to lowball it and everything. Don't do that. Over here is the per capita. This is useful to track where you are. If you notice over here on the per capita up here, 21-22, they had $1,700 was the district giving level. The club giving level, the district was 324. Now that's an anomaly in this case. It's probably not the best example, but the other thing is that there's your membership at the start of the year. And down here is how many people are Irae members, sustaining and Paul Harris eligible. If you're going to help your PE next year set his or her goal, get this chart out so they know what their predecessors have done the previous year and what they have pledged and all the goal, but also what the annual fund contributions are. But this is kind of a snapshot over a 5-year period of where your club is. You want to move.
So this
on.
looks like they were trying to impress the governor because the governor was from their club, and this year they're not going to be able to.
Yeah, the governor was from the club, and the governor decided she was to become a major donor for.
So we can just pick on
So,
this
you
one,
know,
right?
yeah, you know how that is. We've got, yes.
What defines Paul Harris eligible?
Paul Harris eligible is the question is, what is Paul Harris eligible? That's someone that's made $1,000 contribution that year. They may not be a sustaining member, but they have actually made $1,000 contribution during that Rotary year that number shows.
Yeah, they may not be a society member.
May not be a society member. And there are people that do that regular basis. I have one in my club. Still is a Paul Harris Society member. He regularly gives $1,000 a year, but has chosen not to join the Paul Harris Society.
And Mr. Bondi's got 3 of those he's working on.
Yeah, so, but that's clarification of what Paul Harris eligible means on the report. These are reports there that are available for each one of you, if you're your club. You want to go to the monthly contribution report. You want to look at where you are, is to look at this. When you do one of those matching programs that Rich K runs for points, he uses this. That's the reason he asks you to tell the name of the person and where they are before they participate in the program. And he's going to use this report to tell when they've actually made contribution. Next report.
Believe it or not, the Rotary Foundation, because of the U.S. Privacy Act, will not tell anybody that Rob Lynn just made a contribution of $100.
Yeah,
But
what
if
Rich,
I know ahead of time using this report, I can figure out that somebody in your club made a $100 contribution yesterday. And if I know the small subset of people I'm tracking, I can go look at their records specifically and figure out which of the three actually made the $100 contribution. Otherwise, it's a needle in a 2,200 person haystack every day, which is, impossible to do.
Now,
is everybody able to hear Rich?
US Foundation, just want to say, US Foundation folks on the first of the month had printed that club recognition summary, then you also know exactly whether they did or not, because you see the jump on that individual's name, and you can send those 2 copies to Rich, and you've taken.
I want to
his job
hold the
much
people
easier.
online. Are y'all able to hear both George and Rich when they were making those comments?
Yes.
Warrior, good. We changed microphones and want to make sure that's being picked up. Polio Plus, same kind of thing. Shows you where you are. Next report. What can you do to help? Most of you are the Rotary Foundation chairs for your clubs. I think the Rotary Foundation chair club jobs is you are the face of the foundation in your club. We have Rotary Foundation chairs like Roblin from Austin Southwest here. They've got more years under the belt than we're going to mention today. And they've learned how to do it. We have other club foundation chairs that are foundation chair because the club president couldn't find one, and Rich K annoyed them enough that they had to give him a name. They probably have no interest in being the club foundation chair. It's just, they are the foundation chair. You are the ones that set the example for your club. I believe part of the responsibility of a club foundation chair is not just to be an administrator and collect money and do that. I believe you're to be the face of Rotary. You lead by example.
I'm going to say one other thing. We pride ourselves in Rotary. And this is part of the governor's installation script. Every year at this time, from the president of Rotary down to club presidents, everybody changes position. This is not one of those jobs that lends itself to changing a position every year. There is so much to learn, so many nuances, how things can get integrated to work better. That if you have this job for a year, on your 365th day, you're starting to get dangerous. And then we start over again with a brand new chair. This job really is one of those, like Jerry's is a 3-year job. This is a multi-year position if you want your club to get it and come up with a process that works. There's just too much to learn in 1 year to change this job every 365 days.
Okay, so let's just talk about some of the mechanics. Now, you're the foundation chair. Is help your PE this next year set a challenging goal and increase. The membership is changing. Use the per capita membership that you had the previous year as your target, not necessarily the total dollar amount. Increase your participation. This district has an outstanding participation in supporting our foundation, much more so, and that's the reason we've had the results in some other districts. But we still, on the average, in a typical year, will have 15 to 20% of our Rotarians who make no contribution to the Rotary Foundation.
There was 13 last year. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's that. Yeah.
So why not? I don't believe it's because they can't afford 7 cents a day. I don't believe it's because they don't give a darn. I believe it's because they're not informed enough. They don't understand the why. And that is part of that is my job, but it's also your jobs as the club foundation chair, is to help them understand what the foundation does and why that's important. Those charts that George showed earlier about what $100 about. Somebody will say $100. I stopped this morning on the way to Georgetown. When I started doing this a few years ago, I could buy a coffee in Cedar Park at Starbucks for $2. Small, tall pint. I don't get the lucky stuff. Cost me $2.87 this morning. The inflation's just like that today. The $2 a week it takes to be a sustaining member will not buy a cup of coffee today at Starbucks in Georgetown.
Or at their library.
Or at their library. Develop personal relationships. Sending emails is great. But people, talk to the Rotarians. Help them. Don't badger. Don't beat on them. Don't say, I want to talk to you about the Rotary Foundation. We'd like you to participate. You know, here's how the money is spent. Here's why it's important. Here's the fiduciary things. You're not going to change your culture overnight. Rich K and prior to Rich, a lady named Patsy Durham, have created a culture that has developed over a 10 to 15-year period. That's what you want to do in your clubs, but it has to start. You be patient. It's not going to change overnight. Next slide. Recognize your donors. My wife always says, why do you Rotarians? You go all this recognition stuff. People want to be thanked and do it publicly. And George said this earlier, is that you set an example for those others in your club about the support of the Rotary Foundation. If you want a nice night out, come out the last Saturday of January next year. District Governor Shannon is going to have her foundation gala in Pflugerville. It's kind of the formal dress up. It's dress up as much as you're ever going to get Jerry to dress up occasion during the district year. And you're there and it's a lovely evening. Have a nice speaker. I don't know who the speaker is going to be this year. I know who's been invited, but I don't know. But come out.
We actually have a plan A and a B, but we have.
Yeah, we have to have plan A and B. When you're asking the international presidents to come, you always got to have a plan B.
But she hasn't said no yet.
Jen said no. We've asked Jennifer to come, and she was actually committed last year earlier, but went and got herself elected as the international president. And that kind of upset her apple cart. Data mine, look through those reports and see where people are. People do not follow what their giving is. They don't know where they are. You know, if they're had a lady that was $43 away from being a major donor. She had no idea. Rich Kay and I were at a club meeting in Austin by North by Northeast a few years ago. The club was using Rotary Direct and had become a major donor and had no idea they'd become a major donor till we walked in and gave them their recognition.
Yeah, we have a guy, true story, we have a guy in the other room sitting in the membership seminar right now who is a major donor, and he didn't know it until I just told him.
Yeah.
Because he gives everyone Rotary Direct and clicked over the number.
Communicate with your Rotarians. We're not there to, you know, if they understand their why and what the foundation does, they'll support the foundation. If they don't understand, we're going to sound like any other nonprofit calling up at night on the telephone. And very good nonprofits, Heart Association, everybody say, like, please give. It's our foundation. Ronnie Reynolds said, I hope you will support the Rotary Foundation as your charitable foundation of choice, because it's our foundation and we get an opportunity how to say the money spent. Promote the Paul Harris Society. I joined the Paul Harris Society. I thought $1,000 a year. You got to be kidding me. Yeah. And I realized when I took my wife out for dinner, and I don't eat big expensive dinners in Austin, it was costing me almost that amount of money just to buy dinner at an Austin restaurant. Have specific fundraising plans. If you don't have goals, you won't achieve them. And, you know, promote the foundation to supporting organizations. Next slide. Georgetown does a good job of that. Karen Wilson will see to that. Leverage your foundation recognition points. That first time Paul Harris Fellow, they can give cash. The Jerry Johnson Trust can match that, and you can take your club points, or sometimes you have individuals your club, and you can very expeditiously get the Rotarian to the next level. A 100% Paul Harris Club. George showed that a minute ago. The banner that comes from Rotary one time. Those little patches we had designed come when you second, third, and fourth time. You can't be a Paul Harris, all Paul Harris Club on June the 30th and then become one on July 1st. You have to add a new member and get them up there. So there is a club in this district, is a Paul Harris, all Paul Harris Club +7 in Yoakum, Texas.
In Yoakum, Texas.
Like you can't kick someone out and bring them back in.
No, actually, yeah. Actually, when somebody leaves Rotary and rejoins and they join in, or they move from another club, they come into your club after July the 1st, they are a new member. Okay, let's not go there. Schedule speakers to help your members better understand the value of the foundation. I am available. Rich Kay is available, not as much as he used to because he's got 23 districts to shepherd right now. I hope George is going to start doing some of this, but we want to share with you about the foundation. We're there to give information in the talk. The district giving incentive, George, you want to just go over these? We've talked about them, kind of highlighted them, but
Very good. Now, this is one that there's a little bit of confusion about. We've talked about points, right? We can give people points, and that's a great thing. It helps them get to achievement level. Once they reach that first achievement level, Paul Harris, then they're excited about doing more. It's a gradual thing. It happens with all of us. You know, it took me a long time to give Paul Harris several years, the first one. Okay, and then after I did that, I said, yes, well, let me go start adding that Rotary Direct on, $10 more a month. So now I'm giving $20 a month. Okay, well now, you know what? Hey, I can become a Paul Harris Society member. So it's a gradual thing. Understand, we all work that way. We don't just jump in. We're multimillionaires. We can do whatever we want to. We're not. We work through this process. Okay. This gentleman here decided he had accumulated some money. He did not have anyone he wanted to give it to. He set up a foundation. Now this foundation is different than getting someone points. This is actual money. So he will match up to, reaching near Paul Harris, dollar for dollar, not dollar for points, or points for dollar rather, dollar for dollar, any contribution. So if you have someone who's not there yet, your first matching with their dollars, and it needs to be at least $100, is this. And why do you want this as the first matching?
Cash.
Because it's cash. Because it actually is more contributions right now to the Rotary Foundation. That's why you start here first, always. In everything that you're planning, every different way that you're putting it together, if they have money available, at least $100. Now it can't be $10 a month over 12 months because it's a one-time thing. Remember how Rich is going to track it. You say, hey, George Lourigan is going to give you $100. Good. So Rich looks at the numbers. George Lourigan has given you $100. He looks at the numbers. Okay, George gave me $100. We're good. I will now match that. He's not going to say, oh, George gave $10 a month. No, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I can't, look, guys, with 2,200 people, I can't run accruals. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day. That's why we ask for it in bulk. Because I've had a lot of clubs ask, well, if we did this like $50, I think, guys, I can't do it. I just don't have, you know, it already, because it's all manual. You know, there's 3 or 4 reports I got to look at every day, and I already put in 3 hours every day doing this during the match period. And that's just the ones I know are coming. You know, to try to do an accrual.
So start with this. It makes a lot of sense. It gets more money in the foundation, and then matching any other that you're trying to get, you know, to help them get there with points.
We've done this for 10 years now. This is the 10th year we've been doing the match. And we are now over $357,000 of matching in District 5870 member contributions.
And you haven't run out of money yet.
We have not run out of money.
Very good. Okay.
Rich, how is this different than what you and I have talked about?
Well, there are 2 matches, and so people get confused. So you're pretty good at looking up reports. But I got other clubs, I'm going to pick on you, Rob Lim, but she hasn't done this, but I'm going to pick her. So Rob Lim will say, you know, you 2 guys are both giving $100. You know, so here's for the district, or 250 for the district match. And I'll look you up, and you don't have a Paul Harris yet, but you did. So you're actually eligible for the district match. So I book you there. We automatically make that switch back and forth. You don't know it, but you're being matched under the Jerry Johnson rules. You're not. But rather than go back to the club and say, we're not gonna match her because she's not a Paul Harris, we'll just make that switch internal. So I do that a lot. So, I mean, it's invisible to y'all, because at your level, at individual donor level, you don't see the difference. The club level will, they'll end up with an extra $100 in their total annual giving that they can't account for. And that's the $100 that comes from Georgetown.
It's always done to your advantage.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Limited time offered. Now, is this good this year also?
Yes.
Okay.
That's our 5th year we're running this one.
Yes, so
Jerry Johnson started out always to get some of the initial Paul Harris, right?
okay, this is a limited time offer, Jerry Johnson Trust. Okay.
One-to-one basis. This is cash also, right?
No, that's
Okay.
points.
So this is points. Getting to the first Paul Harris is cash.
Yeah, and the other thing
This is
I do need to point one thing out. A lot of people come to us and say, well, you know, we're gonna talk to the government about how you're doing Jerry Johnson. Jerry Johnson is a separate Texas-based organization, not run by District 58-7. It was set up from Jerry's estate. It has its own trustees. It reports to a judge in Belton, Texas, and the 264th District Court every year on how the money was spent. It is not District 58-7. So when people say, well, I'm going to argue with the government, go argue with the government, right? Tell the government the same thing.
don't do that.
You know. The second one is a District 5870 administered match. So those rules are the governor every year says, you know, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, you're making a cash contribution here.
We
You're
can't
getting
change
a
the
points
first-
match.
We can't change the first one without changing the terms of his trust. And that's harder than you know. And so the trustees have decided not to do that.
If you sign up to be a sustaining Paul Harris member, do you get these match points?
no.
No.
You're
Well,
only-
Okay, if you, on the first one, if you are not yet a Paul Harris Fellow and you sign up to do $100 a year and you tell me on day one, see, and you as a member have to play. So Rob Lynn says, I'm going to do that. So Rob Lynn says in September, I'm going to do that. I have to wait till Rob Lynn tells me I've now hit the 100, and then I'll take out the benchmark that I created for you in September, compare the two of them, and see if you have 100 in it. I can't do that every month and track the individual because it's just too much. All right. Now, on the second one, that's a 250 and requires you to already be a Paul Harris Fellow. So I mean, there's different levels of this.
Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions on that? Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, let me just do these.
Go ahead.
The next one. These are some changes. I just want to highlight them. Some have already happened, some are getting ready to happen. We had a club recently, a pretty active club. They put together a grant and they looked at it and they put it together by the 2016 rules, which are not the 2022 rules. Matches to the World Fund, cash contributions to the World Fund eliminated the grants. This is no longer required. International partner, when you're doing a global grant, you gotta have an international partner. Used to, you had to get 30, they had to put up 30%. So if you're going to Mexico and doing an international grant, they had to put up 30% of the funding from Mexico. That's been reduced to 15%, which makes it easier to find that club overseas. Simple school shelter policy, that's ended. Rotary clubs can participate in district grants. I'm going to say that different. If we have a community-based Rotary club, they're going to participate in grants. All the Rotary clubs are for generally a younger population. All the Rotary clubs this district supports are university-based clubs. I'm not going to give money to university-based clubs when the club members are changing on a college campus every year. But community-based Rotary clubs in Europe are norm. You go to Berlin or England or any of that. They're young professionals that are grouped together into club that have earning power and things. So Rotary, a Rotary Club can participate, but we're gonna have to use some discretion about how we do that in the district. The next slide. We've talked about it being invested for 3 years. Earning from the annual fund share will continue to pay for the foundation's operating expenses. A portion of the investment earning. We've talked about all that. The Endowment Fund will come back to our expenses. Global grants, 50% match. District gives $20,000. The World Fund gave $10,000. And this
That's polio.
Polio, yeah. $20,000 comes from the district, $10,000 from World Fund, the Gates match. The Gates match for the Rotary on a global basis raises $50 million a year. They give a 2-for-1 match. What we're saying is the money that you give the polio is going to be leveraged up. The district, the collective giving from Rotarians across the district, $20,000. The World Fund's going to throw in $10,000. Now you got $30,000, and Bill Gates is going to throw in another $60,000. So you're actually, we've taken those contributions and we gave it from individual Rotarians of $20,000 and leveraged that up to $90,000. 80% match. We talked about this earlier. We have a global grant, $40,000. The World Fund's going to come up with $32,000. I mentioned that in the global grant scholars where we used to come up with $15,000. The World Fund came up with 15. Now the district has to put up $16,667, and the remainder of the $30,000 comes from the World Fund. Okay, next slide. We've talked a little bit about this. The slide on the right, beginning July 1st of 2021, the DDF is 47. It's a 47.5% match, and the other $5 or 5% there is going toward paying the operating expenses. All this you just have to be aware of if you're doing a global grant, that the math is different today than the math was just a few years ago. Next slide. This is a chart. Okay, we're going to have rollover money, and we're going to roll it over to next year. And we want to use that money. We didn't use it all this year. In the past, we've rolled that over and been able to allocate all of it. And if we didn't spend it in that year, we moved it to the next year. What Rotary, there are districts in Rotary International, primarily in Asia, that are hoarding large sums of money, DDF. If you're in the corporate world, I can remember when the corporation I was working for, you could accumulate vacation and you all of a sudden, you got some employee that's been there 10, 15, 20 years, that's got 6 months or 9 months of vacation. For the corporation, that was a cost on the books because it was an obligation. And what corporations started doing, say, use it or lose it. You can roll forward 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it was, but you can't roll forward 8, 10, 12 months of vacation. Well, Rotary is doing the same thing with DDF. If you look on the left there, we get new DDF every year. But you had $20,000 rollover, but you only spend 40. So you've got rollover remaining is 20. Our initial global grant allocations has to go 100% against the new DDF before we can use the rollover DDF.
Being a logistician, you know, if you think in terms of warehousing, last in, first out.
Yeah.
All right, it's not first in, first, it's last in, first out. So you have to use all the new stuff before you use anything that's old.
So if you perpetuate this problem, the next year, and you're not using all that DDF, I hear in year 5, at the end of that year, that DDF is going to go away. What Rich Kay said earlier, he's got with 23 districts in our zone, and we'll know which ones have rollover DDF to use. If somebody needs DDF, we can shift that around within the zone family. But if you weren't doing that, and a district got to the end out here, the DDF would go away. We allocate almost all of our DDF this year.
I just want to, an example you have on the board,
Yeah.
that $5,000 on the lower right. On 30 June of 2026,
Yeah.
that district is going to be given a choice of, do you want that money to go to the World Fund? Do you want that money to go to polio? Do you want that money to go to disaster fund? And then lacking an answer from the district, it will all go to the World Fund. But it will go away.
It will go away
At
from,
midnight on 30 June 2026.
we won't be able to use it for our local needs anymore.
Right.
It's kind of an aging process. Like I say, I've seen that with vacation in the corporate world. We allocate, we spend our DDF every year. We allocate it. What'll happen though is we'll allocate money to the Rotary Club. I'll pick on Georgetown since we got all these members in Georgetown. We allocate them $50,000 of DDF for a global grant. Due to circumstances beyond their control, the global grant doesn't get approved, doesn't get submitted, whatever it is. So we've allocated it all, but we're going to have $50,000 of DDF to roll forward to the next year. And it's too late in the year to do anything else with it.
So what we've done with some of that in the past is what we're gonna probably do with Bob Kraus next year. Is those years where the new money is low because the 3 years before were low given, we sort of kind of squirrel some of that money away. So clubs don't see the dip. You know, we've kind of artificially filled in the dip with excess from years before. But you can only do that when you have bad years. And we had a couple of good years in a row. So we're about to go into a period where we're hunting for ways to spend it.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. Seventh area of focus, you know, Rotary clubs participate in global grants. Not university, in my opinion. Contribution disaster fund will be able to be designate their contribution to a specific disaster. That is not yet implemented. If you recall this year, let's talk about the disaster fund. We had the PPE equipment we bought several years ago. This year, we Rotarians in this district made large contributions to the disaster fund. Rotary trustees back in the early part of this year created a time window and said that if a contribution to the disaster fund comes in before the 30th of April, we will designate all that to the Ukrainian relief funds. Generally, as a general rule, it goes into a general fund there, and the trustees have discretion about which disasters, or, you know, how they want to allocate them.
Cuckoo clock's right.
I'm sorry, what? Somebody said something. I'm not sure what that was. One more slide. Yeah, I'll let you just read this.
Even though I'm supposed to be a proponent of this,
Yeah,
using Georgetown again as the example, I don't know why Rotary Club would go through this if there was no Rotary Foundation money in the game. Because all the rule, I mean, if you're gonna pay the freight 100%, you deal with your partner club and you get your grant done and you just do it. And you don't subject yourself to 1,000 counter questions and dotting i's, crossing, it just, I don't see this as viable long-term. I think that's not gonna happen more than once or twice.
yeah, there's a lot of things going on in Rotary. Rich and I are going to a meeting Monday evening, Monday afternoon, whatever it is. It's kind of talking about the future of Rotary. But, you know, a lot of this, and the reason this kind of subject arises is the things we've talked about with the giving level and the demand level and how to deal with the decreasing amount of world fund that we have. Next slide. This is, I'm gonna let you read this. This is kind of interesting. There's a lot of concern, not only with human trafficking, but with the exploitation of children's labor around the world. So there's some new rules in place now that if you're gonna have children under the 16 years of age, and they're gonna work on a project, you need to get a release from them. That was new. I wasn't aware of that until I saw it on the chart. Cash match effective July 20th is no longer matching cash contributions for global grant. Let me say something else about cash contributions for a global grant. You have a global grant, you're going to come to the Rotary Club of Cedar Park and you say, will you help support our grant? We say, yeah, we'll give you $1,000. You need to let the clubs that you ask to help support your grant know. And what you really want is $1,000 net. And there's a 5% handling fee from the Rotary Foundation on cash contribution. So if you really want to net 1,000 from my Rotary Club of Cedar Park, Leander, you need to ask us to write the check for $1,005. Otherwise, that 5%. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's a bad thing. You don't worry about it, engineer. But otherwise, you're going to net less money than what you thought you're going to get.
And that's important, particularly that last one. The international partner contribution has to be 15%. So that water project that Beverly did last year with the Navajos, we needed $30,000 in cash to the grant in order to meet that 15%. So we had to go back to the club in Argentina and said, can you give us 31.5? Otherwise, we're not going to hit the 30 because when they take the 5% out, we now don't have the international cash component.
One more slide on the global grants. Well, let's do the Rotary mission. Another slide, one more slide, the global grant. People write global grants. There are a lot of resources when you prepare a global grant that are available. Our regional grant officers, cadre members for Rotary. Cadre members are people who have a special technical expertise in an area, clean water or whatever it is. They can review those grants in advance, give you some coaching on things that you might want to consider or might want to change. And that's going to enhance and facilitate the approval process for your grant. Because if it goes to Rotary and the grant officer that's reviewing this for the first time discovers errors, he or she is going to return that grant to you, ask you to fix them and resubmit it. And what you want to do is minimize that process. So there are resources available. If you have a cooperating organization, most water wells are dug by an organization. It's a cooperating organization. There's companies that have drilling equipment in Ethiopia or Nicaragua, which we've worked with. If there are partner organizations, you just need to sign an MOU with them. Sustainability, corrections, reclassifications, include bank account on the application. These are things, we can talk about those in grant. What we tried to do today was as a broad brush. We've jumped around, we've duplicated a couple of things. They always say reinforcement's good. I really want to take the last few minutes, and whether you're here, there at home, or whether you're here, if you'll raise your hand if you're on Zoom and
Go back one.
Go back.
I do want to talk about that top one. All right. So everyone in this room, if you're a foundation person, you've done this longer than you, Jeff, I know that you and I have had this conversation, Jim, you and I, and I'm sure you and I have thought about it. Somebody didn't log into the Rotary Direct. They donated their money, or the money got in and got applied to the wrong account. From the time that money posts, you have 60 days to request a fix. On the 61st day, it's locked in concrete. So you give $500, you didn't log in, you didn't get credit for it, guess what? 61 days later, you're not gonna. So if you're handling money going in, please watch it post to make sure it posts the way that you wanted it to post. That's number one. The second one, if you want to be a major donor and you don't want to do it all in 1 year, Rotary will have this little contractual thing they'll sign with you, where they'll split the payments up over 3 years. Used to be on day one, I want to give my money to annual. And then the second year, I decided I want to give it to polio. There used to be, no, whatever you designated in year one is what you're stuck with through the entire time. This is a really neat addition because it allows you to designate future components of that pledge to different funds. So I'll give the first year to annual fund, the second year to polio, maybe the third year to the peace centers or to the disaster fund. You can do that now. Working with people like Rebecca, who was up there before, she can structure that so you can change that designation.
Okay, questions? No? Yeah,
So the recognition report that you could print, once you get $8,000, you can't see the details. It's like 8,000.
9,000.
Oh, 9,000.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, so that's the club recognition summary. And so the number one disappointment for people is I will get an email that says, I'm a Paul Harris +8, 9,000 with a plus. I'm going to be a major donor. The number on the club recognition summary is points plus cash. So anytime you participated in a match over your entire time in Rotary and somebody gave you matching points, that counts for Paul Harris Fellow. It does not count for major donor. So, you have to tell somebody, I just had to do that to somebody in the Rotary Club of Pflugerville yesterday. My wife and I added together, we're 9,000, we got 1,000 to go. Yeah, but 3,000 is points. So you really are down to 6,000, you still have 4,000 to go again. The individual donor can look up his or her donor history report and see that cash component. You as club foundation people or club leaders cannot. The only two people in the district who have access to that report is this guy in your district government. So if somebody in your club says, how much cash have I given? And they don't want to go into their own report to figure it out, you got to get with Jerry or Shannon. Okay? I have access to it because I have one of these billboards, but I really try not to do individual Rotary because I got 50,000 of them, trying to point them all towards Jerry these days.
and we mentioned that earlier, and you do not want to be, when things get misdirected, you don't want to be the foundation. You don't want to be the foundation chair that misdirected. That's not a way to win friends. Other questions? Anybody raising their hand? Georgianne?
No, mostly others saying great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a lot of information here.
Yeah, we had a hand for it.
Just right here.
Joe? Joe, Jim?
Jim.
I, a number of years ago, I was sent to the Center for Philanthropy. I went to work for a nonprofit and went to the Center for Philanthropy, took a few courses. And the one thing that I learned in that process is when you're fundraising, you got to show personal engagement. And number two, probably the most important, you got to believe in the cause. You got to believe in the cause. And if you don't believe in the cause, then you can't go forward. And one of the ways you believe in the cause is you always look at cents on the dollar that are committed to the cause. So the nonprofits that I've worked with, typically the selling point is, hey, 90 cents on the dollar goes to the cause. So one of the ways that I find very successful, and there's a lot of people that dispute me over this, is I don't do email. I do not believe in it. Might say, wait a minute, Jim, what century? Yeah. Okay. Every person that I make contact with, I call. And I make personal contact. And if we can't talk at that moment in time, then we find, matter of fact, since we've been here, I've had 2 or 3 messages of people that want. The reason why I tell you that is it's the personal engagement. And it lets them know that you're truly genuine. There was a complaint registered against me last year, the entire club. They raised it to the president of the club. So Sheriff, complaint was, we have a problem with Jim Bond. President said, okay, tell me what it is. They said, we can't say no to the guy.
So, Alex, I don't know if is everybody picking that up on the Jim Bondi's sharing with us? It's about personal engagement. You know, it's nice to send emails. That's easy. It's a way of kind of distancing yourself between other people. But personal engagement, phone calls, personal contact meetings is the most successful, and the passion that you have to have you can't sell something that you don't believe in.
Well, we kind of made light of the Temple South contribution last year. That spiked because we had the governor in the club. But what we also had was a new club foundation chair who took every new member of the club to lunch to introduce himself and talk to them. And he was able in 1 year to take a club that hadn't been 100% Paul Harris since 2013 and get it back to 100% Paul Harris fellow in 1 year by having those one-on-one personal conversations. And so David Lockwood did it, Jim Bondi does it. I mean, it does work. It does work.
This is the engagement. I mean, this is, some of us are not comfortable asking for, but if it's done properly, and I really believe the role of the Rotary Foundation chair is not an administrative job. I mean, there's an administrative function to it, but the real role and the most important role of the Rotary Foundation chair, the club chair, is to have a passion about the foundation and share with people what the foundation does, when they support it, where their money is going, and why that's important. And in the end, all these recognition, Bequest Society and Paul Harris, all this stuff, we measure that in dollars and cents and contributions and all that. But in the end, the right measurement for support of the Rotary Foundation is how you bring hope to the disenfranchised of this world. They can have a better day tomorrow.
There's one other thing too. Take time to listen to
Jim.
members.
I want you to hear your mic's up here.
Take
Talk loud.
Take the time to listen to the members. Take the time to listen to them. And when you do that, they acknowledge. And so, for example, yesterday I had a donation and the donor said to me, I really want to do it, but I want to make this dollar amount. But I don't want to put out all of this money at the same time. I said, terrific. Let's split it up over a few months and we'll do 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And the individual said, perfect, we can do that. So take the time to listen to the member. And the biggest thing is, what is this fund? What has the Rotary Foundation done for us locally? The other thing that I do with people that are apprehensive is I say to them, meet me for lunch and I'm going to take you somewhere. And what I do is I take them to the places where we have actually put our money to use, where the money has been applied, and we show them the good that the money has done so that they could see it with their own eyes. And I've got a top 3 list that I take them to. I'm sorry.
Okay, I want to, yes, those of you have to go. If you have questions later on, get back with me. John Chenoweth from the Rotary Club of Georgetown, Sun City.
We invite you to come speak to our club for 20 or 30 minutes. Do you use selected slides from this presentation?
I do use no slides.
Okay.
The question was, do I use selected slides from this presentation when I come visit your club? And I love to come visit your club. I've changed my presentation around a little bit this year. What I did last year was really annual fund focused, based on the fact that past District Governor Ronnie Reynolds pointed out there was some lack of understanding of the foundation and Rotary. I talked a little bit about that, but I really talked more about the what and the why you give. It's not it's not a presentation on mechanics of how to run the Rotary Foundation. It's really is, I want to touch somebody that maybe doesn't understand about the foundation, or they want to understand more about the foundation. What I'm trying to do this, what's that?
It's inspiring.
What I try to do this year too, I didn't do it, is what Jim just talked about is, if I'm going to Sun City Rotary Club, I'm going to try to research what your DAP grants were before, or what you're doing, so I can translate that back into something that's meaningful to the club, something to see. I mean, my club's got, we spend our DAP money every year pretty much on the same project. And so, I would talk about that. You got to gauge it on the amount of time you have, but I don't use PowerPoint. Electronics work great. I worked in the technology industry for many years, but every club's got a different setup. And I just don't want to deal with the technical issues and.
But one of the things you can help us with, and I may be preaching to the choir here, but I go to a Rotary Club and here's what I hear the club president say. The district gave us this money this year, so this is our grant.
Yeah.
The district didn't give you that money. It is a return on your investment in the Rotary Foundation. People don't know that money that comes back, or we got a vocational scholarship, isn't that great? It's your return on your investment in the Rotary Foundation. It's that money coming back to us through the share system that enabled us to do that. Please ask your presidents to connect those dots for your members. So, what does the Rotary Foundation do? You like that grant, you had a vocational scholar. Oh, by the way, you got this great global grant going on in Africa. All of that's paid for by a return on your investment in the Rotary Foundation. It isn't somebody drew the money and said, here, have some extra money.
Probably the biggest place you can find out about how the foundation money is spent is pick up the Rotary magazine each month and see what goes on in there. I want to thank everybody for your time. I want to thank George and Georgianne.
Thank you, George.
And we want to thank Pam Blakely, who's not here, but we called it 6 a.m. in California time this morning to help get us onto the Zoom link, because she had to have the second level authentication of the password. She knew we were going to call. I mean, that wasn't an issue, but I'm just saying, Pam's our webmaster. I'm passionate about the foundation. You heard that everyone else is passionate about the thing. I think a lot of our work is just simply education.
I have a very robust Zoom link that's paid for by your Rotary too. So if you ever need an extra Rotary, that comes with translator support and everything.
This password on the Zoom thing seems to have come along recently. So I don't know what it is, but I mean, I think our PR people.
Zoom bombing.
No, I think it's our PR people. They're putting restrictions on it. So yes, sir.
So if we want to use some of your slides.
I'll provide anything to you want.
Yeah, can you send us the actual slide deck?
I post it and give you a link to it. It's too big a file. It's 110 slides in there. It's too big to go through an email.
Well, we can give you a link to the Dropbox.
And that thing, I'm going to be at your club in, I don't know, sometime October. I don't know if you want them before then. If not, I can put them on.
No, that's fine.
I can put them on Thumb Drive, try to remember. If not, they're in the district Dropbox account, and I can give you a link to that. But it's too big. The file size is too large to send as an email attachment.
But you did a PDF.
I have a PDF of it. I can send you as an email attachment.
Yeah, I've got that.
I mean,
But
the slide deck, I have no problem sharing any of this. Rich shares things with me. Other people share things with me. I share things with them. It's all about promoting the foundation.
I'll shoot you an email and you can just send it on.
Yeah, I'll do that. If you have a problem with it, I sent George the link. And it didn't like George. It wouldn't let him in there. I don't know what went wrong, but yeah, you certainly have access to anything.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good Saturday.
Thank you.
Hi, Ignacio Corsicano's here. So, okay, I think we can close the Zoom link now.